Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales. Chapter 4952. Therefore, even if Kong Shinmu could already obtain this starry small world, he could not explore what was under the plains of the small world. This was all for later. After exploring the 12 shrines on the plains of the starry small world, Kong Shinmu felt that he had formed a faint connection with this starry small world. This connection was not the closest kind, but it allowed Kong Shinmu to feel the existence of the starry sky. In other words, this starry small world was now something that Kong Shinmu could use, but he still could not control it. He could only borrow this starry small world. As for when he could truly control this starry small world, Kong Shinmu did not know. For a small world like this, if you want to completely control it, you have to completely control its core. The core of a small world is usually located in an extremely hidden place. For example, the Dragon Martial Continent also has a core, and its core is in the hands of the senior members of the Dragon Gods. Only with the core of the small world can you truly control it. Of course, you can use this starry small world and take it away, which is already very good. As for the core of the small world, take it out first. The Black Dragon's consciousness reminded him. Kong Shinmu nodded. Then, with just a thought, he found that the entire starry small world in front of him began to shrink. The plains became the size of a palm, and then the size of a thumb. Finally, Kong Shinmu's vision became completely dark, but he felt that he was still in the starry small world. The plains of this starry small world are not so big. Now it seems to be about 10,000 miles in radius. But if one layer of the seal is unlocked, it will expand by at least 10,000 miles. The plains of the starry small world are much smaller than the Dragon Martial Continent. However, Kong Shinmu was also very clear that the Dragon Martial Continent and the starry small world were not on the same level. The starry small world was not only a small world, but also a heavenly treasure with 12 layers of seals. However, the Dragon Martial Continent was just a small world with sun-shaped gems and moon-shaped gems. There were no engravings or anything like that, so they could not be compared to each other. Kong Shinmu's vision was dark, and he felt the small starry sky world in front of him was still shrinking. Finally, a silver light flashed in front of Kong Shinmu, and what appeared in front of him was his own palm. There was a starry blue rune in his palm. This rune looked similar to a cosmic rune, but it was clearly more complicated and mysterious. It contained an extremely terrifying power. This was the starry sky small world. To think that it's just a symbol in the outside world. A symbol actually contains a small world. How incredible! Kong Shinmu was amazed by this. Isn't that normal? It's just that you haven't seen the true form of the Martial Dragon Continent. It's just a seed. However, that thing is kept in an extremely secretive place. If others want to go to the lesser world where the Martial Dragon Continent is, they can only go through the void. The Black Dragon's consciousness transmitted its thoughts. Kong Shinmu nodded, indicating that he understood. The reason why other races could go to the Martial Dragon Continent from the void was that the Martial Dragon Continent's void coordinates were leaked to outsiders. Therefore, outsiders could directly go to the Martial Dragon Continent from the chaotic battlefield without going through the Martial Dragon Continent's true body. However, now that Kong Shinmu had this starry blue starry sky small world symbol, it was impossible for others to know the void coordinates inside it. Therefore, at least at this stage, anyone who wanted to enter the starry sky small world could only go through the starry sky symbol in Kong Shinmu's hand. And this, Kong Shinmu would definitely not tell anyone. Now, what should I do? Should I just wait here? Kong Shinmu looked around and found himself in a crystal palace. This crystal palace looked quite luxurious and seemed to be in the core area of the entire mid-level ruins. And in front of him, there was a stone tablet in the center of the crystal palace. The stone tablet was engraved with many starry blue symbols and names. Perhaps they were the heroic spirits of some of the predecessors of the Starry Sky inheritance. And on both sides of the stone tablet, there was a row of crystal pillars. On those crystal pillars, there were many starry moon pendants that Kong Shinmu had obtained before. The starry moon pendants that Kong Shinmu had previously obtained did not have anything inside. It was basically an empty storage treasure with a storage space of 10,000 miles. But now, there were a total of 99 starry moon pendants in front of Kong Shinmu. Jiang Shenwu stepped forward and gave it a try. He found that he could use the symbol of the Starry Sky Pocket World to collect all the Starry Sky Moon pendants. Of course, it was all stored inside the Starry Sky Pocket World. Kong Shinmu found that these Starry Moon pendants had appeared in a certain temple in the Starry Sky Small World. This Starry Moon pendant seems to be a reward for the person who obtained the inheritance of the Starry Sky Force. Kong Shinmu had left a Starry Moon pendant for himself, and he could only open this one. Even if he had temporarily obtained the symbol of the Starry Sky Small World, he could only open one of these Starry Moon pendants. When he opened this Starry Moon pendant, he found that there were many good things inside. Among them, there were as many as 10 spatial essence alone, and 2 high-grade spatial crystals. In addition, there were 10 complete pieces of haze metal. This made Kong Shinmu not know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect that the haze metal that he had been desperately pursuing would actually be in this Starry Moon pendant, and there were many spatial materials in the Starry Moon pendant. Most importantly, Kong Shinmu also saw an ancient battle spirit. This ancient battle spirit was a rare resource that could speed up the fusion between a person and a combat weapon by at least 10 times. Kong Shinmu had been very envious of Su Yi for obtaining one before. He didn't expect that he would also get one now, and it was in the Starry Moon pendant. It was quite comfortable. I came to this place first, so I've taken advantage of it. Just this Starry Sky Small World alone has benefited me immensely. Kong Shinmu was a little emotional. Now that I haven't been sent out, it should be that there are other people in this intermediate relic who are cultivating the inheritance of the Starry Sky Force, right? I stayed in the inheritance space for 3 years before I cultivated the Starry Sky Force to the peak of the Emperor stage and finished consolidating it. For others, I'm afraid it would take 5 or even 10 years. In that case, it's very likely that the intermediate relic will close in 2 months. At that time, those who haven't cultivated successfully will be considered to have failed, and those who have cultivated successfully before that will be qualified to come to this crystal palace where I am. 10 years in the accelerated space is almost 1.5 months in the outside world. It seems that I still need to wait here for about a month, until the intermediate relic closes before I can leave. Chapter 4953. Kong Shinmu waited in this crystal palace. On the 10th day, another person finally came to this crystal palace, and the person who appeared in front of him was Su Yi. When he saw Kong Shinmu, Su Yi was obviously stunned. Then, he covered his mouth and chuckled. Kong Shinmu, it seems you're faster than me. I didn't expect you to also want to obtain this new power of inheritance. How is it? This power is very strong, right? But what surprised me is that cultivating this inheritance doesn't require us to abolish our original inheritance. What a surprise. When Su Yi talked about this, he seemed to be very sad. Kong Shinmu couldn't help but smile. Could it be that you were already prepared to lose the Demon God clan's royal inheritance? That's not it. Su Yi shook his head. I just tried to absorb it. Oh, no, I absorbed it in the accelerated space for 10 days. During these 10 days, I gained nothing, but on the 11th day, I suddenly realized that I could cultivate this power of inheritance. It's as if there's some power helping me cultivate this power of inheritance. When Kong Shinmu heard this, he thought to himself, so that's how it is. There was no need to abolish one's own power of inheritance. As long as one absorbed it in the accelerated space for more than 10 days, it would automatically activate the all-fusion power in the space, allowing it to help one absorb this power of inheritance. Suyi, I didn't expect you to be able to successfully cultivate this starry sky inheritance. How is it? It feels good, right? I didn't let you down, right? Kong Shinmu said with the corners of his mouth curled up. Of course. Suyi covered his mouth and smiled. This power can be activated as long as one has a human body, and it also increased my comprehension of spatial power by at least 3 times. This opportunity might be the best opportunity I've encountered in my life. At this time, the two suddenly discovered that a star-moon pendant suddenly condensed in the stone tablet in the center of the crystal palace. This star-moon pendant flew directly toward Suyi. This made Kong Shinmu's expression change slightly. Then, he hurriedly checked the 98 star-moon pendants stored in the shrine in his small star-moon world. He discovered that the star-moon pendant flying toward Suyi was one of them. In other words, as long as someone could successfully cultivate the power of the starry sky inheritance to the peak of the Emperor realm and come to this palace, they would definitely obtain a starry moon pendant. Even if Kong Shinmu put them away, it would be useless. Kong Shinmu was a little depressed. He only had 97 star moon pendants left. That was his fortune. Of course, there was nothing he could do about it. Suyi had also obtained a star moon pendant. He excitedly opened it and checked the items inside. Wow, 10 space condensed essences, and 2 of them are high grade. And there's also a space illuminating material. Is this horror metal? There are actually 10 pieces of horrid metal. Is this for us to forge some kind of battle weapon? Suyi couldn't believe it. Then, she thought of Kong Shinmu. Oh right, Kong Shinmu, didn't you want horrid metal? I got quite a lot. At this point, Suyi finally reacted. She glanced at Kong Shinmu, then scratched her head in embarrassment. You came before me, so you must have gotten these things, right? Then you don't need more horrid metal. We've gained quite a lot this time, and we even obtained an ancient war spirit. Oh, 2 ancient war spirits. Use one for yourself, and sell the other one. Kong Shinmu's heart ached. This prodigal girl was too infuriating. Ancient war spirits were much more precious than space illuminating materials and space condensed essences. Ancient war spirits couldn't be bought in the outside world, but the latter could be bought. It was just a matter of price. This Suyi was actually able to obtain 2 ancient era's battle spirits. His luck was truly boundlessly good. However, Kong Shinmu couldn't be jealous even if he wanted to. Furthermore, there was no need for him to be jealous. If nothing unexpected happened, he still had 97 star moon pendants in his small starry sky world. If every star moon pendant contained an ancient era's battle spirit, wouldn't that mean that he had 97 ancient era's battle spirits? He'd made a huge profit. Of course, the premise was that he could open these star moon pendants. As long as I cultivate the power of the starry sky inheritance to the peak of the emperor rank, I can open these star moon pendants. I can slowly cultivate them after I leave this place. When that time comes, wouldn't these riches be equivalent to mine? When Kong Shinmu thought of this, his mentality was especially balanced. As Suyi opened her star moon pendant, the two of them waited together. They didn't have to wait for too long. After 3 to 5 days, Gu Xinyue, Chu Yueqiang, and Yu Han arrived at this crystal palace almost at the same time. Of course, there was a sequence, but it was only a difference of 2 to 4 hours. It didn't make a big difference. The 3 of them had also cultivated the power of the starry sky inheritance to the peak of the emperor rank and successfully arrived here. As a result, there were 3 less star moon pendants in Kong Shinmu's starry sky small world. Seeing the 3 of them open the star moon pendants together, Kong Shinmu felt distressed. Of course, this was just a joke. Kong Shinmu's main concern now was that there were actually so many people who cultivated the power of the starry sky inheritance. This power was definitely not weak. Unfortunately, these two kinds of inheritances were not recognized in the current world. Therefore, not many people would spend the effort to cultivate the power of the starry sky inheritance, right? But unexpectedly, as long as they persisted in cultivating and absorbing the power of the starry sky inheritance for 10 days, they would be able to open the power of all fusion to help them improve. Probably no one would have thought of this, right? In fact, Su Yi, Gu Xinyue, and Chu Yueqiang were just trying their luck. They didn't have the idea of leaving the inheritance space too early. Otherwise, they would have missed this opportunity. After another 2 days or so, 2 more people passed through the crystal corridor and came to this palace. And the appearance of these 2 people was quite shocking. Because these 2 people were originally geniuses of the demon god race, but now, the cultivation of the demon god race had been abolished by them and replaced by the power of the starry sky inheritance. Su Yi couldn't believe the appearance of these 2 people. There were actually people from the demon god race who gave up the cultivation of the demon god race and switched to cultivating this power of the starry sky inheritance. Admittedly, this power of the starry sky inheritance was very strong, but to give up the inheritance of the demon god race so decisively was a little hard to accept, right? You too, even Kong Xinmu and the others were a little speechless. Weren't these 2 people too powerful? Chapter 4954. The names of these 2 demon god geniuses were Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning. Among the geniuses of the demon god race, the 2 of them weren't too eye-catching. In fact, their compatibility with the demon god race's inheritance was at the 9th level emperor level. This meant that it would be extremely difficult for them to continue improving their demon god race cultivation. It might still be possible to step into the transcendent level as long as they had enough resources to do so. But what then? At the transcendent level, they would be at the bottom for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their lives, they could only bully those who were weaker than them. This situation made them feel rather hopeless. Therefore, they decided to break down and rebuild. This time, they made the right choice. The power of the starry sky inheritance allowed them to explode with power comparable to the other races without the help of other bodies. Moreover, this power did not seem to have any bottlenecks for human cultivation. This was the real key. It allowed Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning to step into a realm that they might not have been able to step into in their entire lives. That was, the supreme level. After Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning arrived at this crystal palace, under the dumbfounded gazes of the 5 people around them, each of them received 3 star moon pendants. In other words, they had received the rewards they deserved. Although they had given up their original cultivation, the 2 extra star moon pendants contained precious resources that were enough to make up for their own cultivation. At this moment, 7 people gathered in the crystal palace. All 7 of them came from the same crystal corridor. However, when all 7 of them arrived, the entrance to this crystal corridor was immediately closed. Everyone looked around in awe. I'm afraid that only the 7 of us will be cultivating the power of the starry sky inheritance this time. Yu Han glanced around. He just happened to be standing here. He just wanted to give it a try and absorb the power of the starry sky inheritance for 10 days. He didn't expect that he would succeed. Of course, this was also because he yearned for this kind of inheritance power. That was why he had persisted for 10 days. Otherwise, he would have left like the others. This was fate. A choice that could decide one's life. It should be just the 7 of us now. Chen Chong did not feel any regret now. Instead, he seemed rather cheerful. He was dressed in black, and when he smiled, he gave off an inexplicable feeling. Wei Xiaoning, on the other hand, was a little depressed. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have crippled the demon god race's cultivation. Although he encountered a bottleneck at the peak of the martial emperor realm, but, brother, don't think too much. Chen Chong patted him on the shoulder and laughed cheerfully. It's normal for you to regret it now. But think about it, when you cultivate the power of the starry sky legacy to a higher level. Let's not talk about the supreme level, but the supreme god level. Will you regret your decision then? No. Wei Xiaoning said in a firm tone. That's it. Chen Chong laughed heartily. We got 2 more rewards than the 5 of them. Just the rewards from these 2 star moon pendants are worth more than all my belongings. What's more, the star moon pendant itself is very valuable. Kang Xinmu also said with a smile, it's rare to see a storage treasure with a radius of 10,000 miles. It's worth at least 200,000 gold dragon coins in the outside world. What's more, the star moon pendant can explode with a protective barrier to block all attacks below the supreme level for us. That's right. The star moon pendant itself is a treasure. Coupled with the resources inside, it's even more difficult to find. A star moon pendant along with other treasures is worth at least 1 million. Sigh, I think it's a pity to give up the demon god race's inheritance. Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning sighed. After all, they still had a sense of belonging to the demon god race. Now that they had crippled the demon god race's inheritance, it was equivalent to leaving the demon god race. Even if the demon god race still wanted them to join, they would find it a little strange. Who knew if the demon god race's upper echelons wanted to use them? They had experienced this kind of thing before and had seen it many times, so they didn't think too much about it now. Do you still have relatives in the race? Suyi asked at this time. She was, after all, a member of the demon god race's royal family. In such a situation, she would definitely ask about it. Suyi. Chen Chong glanced at Suyi with a complicated expression, but he quickly shook his head with a bitter smile and said with a smile, to be honest, I used to like you quite a bit, but now, it's destined that we won't be able to be together. You are still a genius of the demon god race's royal family, but I no longer belong to the demon god race. I have always been alone in the race. I don't have any relatives. I remember that Wei Xiaoning and I are the same. In other words, the 2 of them had no relatives in the demon god race. No wonder they could so decisively get rid of the demon god race's cultivation. Your situation, cough cough. Suyi blushed a little when she heard Chen Chong's words. Although she had a bold personality, she was practically a blank piece of paper when it came to relationships. She thought about it and said, now that you don't have the demon god race's cultivation, in the eyes of the demon god race's royal family, there is almost no possibility of accepting you back into the race. Since you have cultivated the starry sky inheritance, work hard in this area in the future. Can we stay in this intermediate relic and keep cultivating here? Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were very concerned about this. After all, it was related to their future. Regarding this question, Kang Xinmu answered directly, no, this intermediate relic is the same as the other relics. It can only last for 2 months. After 2 months, this intermediate relic will be closed forever. This, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning suddenly felt a little depressed. What should they do? They no longer belonged to the demon god race. Even Suyi of the demon god race's royal family had personally said that the demon god race would not continue to take them in. This was the demon god race's custom, and it had nothing to do with Suyi. Although Suyi was from the demon god race's royal family, she could not change the rules of the demon god race's royal family. She was not a supreme expert and could not set a new rule. Unless one day, Suyi could become a supreme existence. At that time, she might have enough say in the race. But before that, it was useless for her to speak. Even if her father was a high-ranking member of the demon god race's royal family, it was useless. So now, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were very depressed. Chapter 4955. After all, Kang Xinmu now had the starry sky small world and had absolute say in the inheritance of the starry sky. It could even be said that there was nothing wrong with him being the master of this inheritance. The rune of the starry sky small world was in his palm and he couldn't even see it now. It was impossible for others to take it away. Therefore, when Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were worried about their future, Kang Xinmu stood up and said in a deep voice, "The inheritance of the starry sky is a way to use the power of nature with the human body. When this way is upgraded to the peak, it will definitely not be weaker than other inheritances. Everyone here should have the idea of upgrading the inheritance of the starry sky. In that case, if you want to upgrade it, you can look for me. I can take you to a place related to the inheritance of the starry sky." The place that Kang Xinmu mentioned was naturally the starry sky small world. However, he didn't tell them that it was the starry sky small world. He only said that it was a place that he could let others enter and exit. There were some temples related to the inheritance of the starry sky in that place, and in those temples, they could obtain a higher level of the inheritance of the starry sky. He let them explore the starry sky small world by themselves. Kang Xinmu didn't tell them that the entrance to that place was actually the starry sky rune in Kang Xinmu's palm. In that case, they could temporarily find their own way, and at the same time, it was equivalent to being under Kang Xinmu's control. "Oh? Where is that place?" Chen Chong was very interested in Kang Xinmu's words. "Brother Kang Xinmu, it is said that you were the first to come to this crystal palace. Did you find anything else?" In response to this question, Kang Xinmu didn't say much and just smiled mysteriously. Then, he changed the topic, "Not just the two of you, but also others. If you want to improve the grade of the starry sky inheritance, feel free to come to me. Only I can take you to that place." Hearing Kang Xinmu say this, Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang both heaved a sigh of relief. After all, Kang Xinmu had a good relationship with them. With the entrance in Kang Xinmu's hands, it was much better than having it in the hands of others. On the other hand, Suyi was a little surprised. Obviously, he didn't expect Kang Xinmu to have such information. Of course, Suyi felt that what Kang Xinmu grasped was information. Yuhan scratched his head and grinned at Kang Xinmu. "Kang Xinmu, can I go in? If I go in, will I be able to return to the Bone Imperial family's small world at any time?" The Bone Imperial family was different from the Dragon God clan. It was a small clan with inheritance, so it couldn't occupy a great world to develop. It only developed in a small world. In other words, the Bone Imperial family's population base was much smaller than other clans. Although there were many elites, the number was not large. After all, it was impossible for them to occupy a great world. Therefore, what Yuhan was concerned about now was whether she could freely go back and forth from the Bone Imperial family's small world. Maybe not. Kang Xinmu shook his head. "In short, only I can lead you to that place. Whether you want to go or not, it's up to you." Then, Kang Xinmu explained the rules. After entering, if they wanted to come out, they only needed to draw a few star runes on the spot. Those star runes were not a problem for the 6 people present. When Kang Xinmu saw them draw star runes, he would naturally release them from the starry sky small world. As for where they would be released, of course, it would be next to Kang Xinmu. However, Kang Xinmu might not necessarily appear in the other party's field of vision, so as to maintain his sense of mystery. After doing this several times, to ensure the other party's character and so on, Kang Xinmu could try to set up a meeting place. In the future, every time he went in and out, he would meet at that meeting place. In this way, the organization of the starry sky inheritance would slowly improve. Even Kang Xinmu wanted to take Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning under his command. Now, he wanted to put the people of the Devouring Dragon group into the starry sky small world, but there was a big problem, and that was the problem of the all-melting power. Where could he get the all-melting power now? Without the all-melting power, the people of the Devouring Dragon group could not cultivate the starry sky inheritance. Therefore, If Kang Xinmu wanted to nurture more inheritors of the Starry Sky inheritance, he could only choose cultivators who had not cultivated before. It was said that the Starry Sky inheritance was a kind of force of nature. The closer one was to nature, the faster one's cultivation would be. Perhaps Kang Xinmu could start from this aspect and specially select some people from the tribe to cultivate. Of course, this was a matter for later. At this stage, it was still about the problem of settling Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning. Soon, after a discussion, they decided to enter the place that Kang Xinmu mentioned. In any case, they could not return to the demon god race now. Continuing to cultivate the Starry Sky inheritance was the best choice. It would be best if they could cultivate some forces by themselves after obtaining enough resources and methods. Not to mention others, whether it was Chen Chong or Wei Xiaoning, they might have the idea of opening up a tribe on their own. And the most important prerequisite for this idea was strength. They had to have supreme super strength to be able to open up their own inheritance in an environment where there were many tribes. Therefore, improving themselves was what they wanted to do the most now. Everything else was thrown to the back of their minds. Since that was the case, Kang Xinmu did not say anything more. He walked forward and directly patted Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning's back. Go in that direction, and you will be automatically transported in soon. If you want to come out, just find a place to carve those Starry Sky runes. Kang Xinmu casually pointed in the direction of the Crystal Palace. After that, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning walked in that direction with some skepticism. After about 3 breaths of time, their figures suddenly disappeared from the palace, as if they had been teleported to some other place. This scene caused the surrounding people to jump in fright. They really went in that direction? Where did the two of them go? Of course, the others did not know that Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were now in the palm of Kang Xinmu's hand. The Starry Sky small world was actually in his palm. Chapter 49-56. After Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning disappeared, the remaining 4 people, apart from Kang Xinmu, were all dumbfounded. In this direction? Su Yi was the most curious. She walked directly in the direction where the 2 people disappeared. Of course, nothing happened. Cough, cough. The entrance to that place changes all the time. Only I can see it. Kang Xinmu waved his hand and explained, even if this intermediate relic closes, I know where to enter the Starry Sky inheritance land. When the time comes, you can look for me if you want to go. Now, it seems like we can leave this intermediate relic. It's about to close. Kang Xinmu looked up and could clearly feel that the surrounding space was starting to vibrate abnormally. This was obviously a sign that the entire intermediate relic was about to close. After that, this intermediate relic would be sealed in the void. No one would be able to enter this relic again. Up until now, the things in this relic had basically been moved away. There was no point in coming in again. Su Yi couldn't find the entrance that Kang Xinmu mentioned. In the end, she could only give up. She said to Kang Xinmu, I'll look for you when I'm free. Remember this. When we go back this time, first calculate how much you should give the demon god race. These words stunned Kang Xinmu. His harvest this time was huge. Apart from the Starry Sky small world, including the things in the Starry Moon pendant, Kang Xinmu had obtained more than 1,000,000 gold dragon coins. In total, he had to give close to 300,000 gold dragon coins. It wasn't that Kang Xinmu couldn't take out these gold dragon coins. However, once he took out all these gold dragon coins, where would he get the cultivation resources to unlock the Heaven and Earth Saint Grade seal? Sigh, forget it. If I don't give up, I won't be able to catch the wolf. Kang Xinmu could only sigh and accept his fate. In any case, he had made a profit of 1,000,000 gold coins, so it was understandable that he had to pay 300,000 gold dragon coins. The exchange rate of gold dragon coins and demon divine coins was about the same. Hence, if they were to split the profits in 3 ways, Kong Shinmu would only need to fork out around 300,000 gold dragon coins. Of course, that would depend on how much the demon god race valued Kong Shinmu. Outside the intermediate ruins, the experts and practitioners of various races had been waiting for more than a month. At the beginning, they were excited and nervous, then disappointed and regretful. When this middle-level relic was about to close, almost no one thought that Kong Shinmu and the others could come out. Even Shengwan Dai, and Tan Shoujua didn't think that Kong Shinmu would be able to escape. After all, such a long time had passed. If something had happened to Kong Shinmu and the others, it was basically impossible for them to come out. If they were cultivating the inheritance, then they would have most likely crippled their original cultivation. In that case, what was the point of coming out? However, just as everyone was feeling disappointed and regretful, Kong Shinmu and the others finally appeared. They flew out from the entrance of the middle-level relic. They were not in the form of a divine dragon or a demon god, but in the form of a human. Then, Kong Shinmu, Gu Xinyue, and Chu Yueqiang flew together to the side of Emperor Shi's divine dragon. Yuhan flew back to the Bone Imperial family, and Suyi flew back to the demon god race. Where are Wei Xiaoning and Chen Chong? Soon, a demon god race expert asked Suyi. I don't know. I didn't see them. Maybe they are dead. Suyi replied without a care. What have you been doing in the relic this month? Soon, others asked. I have been absorbing this power in the inheritance space, the inheritance power of the starry sky. This power seems to be able to coexist with the inheritance power of our demon god race. Suyi didn't try to hide it and said it directly. However, she didn't say anything about the power of all melting. Instead, she said that it could coexist with the power of the demon god race. This stunned the surrounding demon god race cultivators. Did this mean that they had all missed out on this powerful inheritance of the power of the starry sky? This was too exaggerated. How could someone in this world cultivate 2 kinds of inheritance power? There was also a kind of inheritance power that was purely performed by a human body. It was called the power of nature. On the other hand, there were some supreme experts who had explored places that ordinary people couldn't reach. They had read some ancient texts from ancient times, and from those texts, they had gained a deeper understanding of legacies than ordinary people. This is the legendary power of nature. However, even the power of nature can't be cultivated casually. To cultivate 2 kinds of inheritance power at the same time, one must need the legendary power of all melting. In the inheritance space of this relic, there must be the power of all melting. The rest of you didn't manage to cultivate this kind of inheritance power. It's such a waste. You missed out on a great opportunity. After this news spread, almost countless people cried bitterly. Without a doubt, judging from the aura Jiang Shenwu and the others displayed when they came out, even if they were in human form, their combat strength was not inferior to the inheritors of the various clans who were at the peak of the martial emperor realm. From this, it could be seen how powerful the inheritance of the power of the starry sky was. And they had actually missed it? What on earth was going on? No one could figure it out. As for the details, Suyi and the others naturally wouldn't say anything to the others. Anyway, they had missed it. It was too late to cultivate now. This was because the mid-level relic had been closed. The inheritance space was gone, so it was naturally impossible to obtain the power of all melting. If they wanted to rely on Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky Small World to cultivate the power of the Starry Sky inheritance, they could, but they had to destroy the previous inheritance. This was the cruel reality. Once they missed it, they would suffer for eternity. This kind of miss was too fatal to a cultivator. Even Shengwan Dai, and Tan Shoujua sighed because of this. However, the 2 of them were still quite open-minded. They just thought that it was not their fate. Anyway, among so many people this time, only Kong Shinmu's group of 5 had obtained the power of this inheritance. It was just 5 people, and it wouldn't affect the situation too much. And then, the supreme experts of the demon god race came to the door, preparing to count the harvest of Kong Shinmu, Gu Xinyue, and Chu Yueqiang in the relic. According to the rules, they would take a 30% share. This was the highlight of this operation. When the other party came to the door, Kong Shinmu straightforwardly laid out the things he had obtained. Everything is here. You can name a price for each item. I will decide according to the price. I will keep what I have for myself and sell what I have to the demon god race. I will mortgage my share. When he said this, the other party was dumbfounded. Chapter 49-57. Kong Shinmu's purpose in saying this was to make the other party uncertain about what he would keep and what he would give to the demon god race. After all, not all of these things were useful. If the demon god race raised the price of everything, then Kong Shinmu could sell everything to them and not keep anything for himself. But if the other party lowered the price, then Kong Shinmu would definitely keep everything for himself and pay the 30% share with gold dragon coins. This kid was quite shrewd. The supreme expert from the demon god race laughed and then discussed the price with Kong Shinmu one by one. The price given by this expert made Kong Shinmu quite satisfied. This price was quite fair, and there was no malice in it. Kong Shinmu could choose for himself. Therefore, Kong Shinmu decided to keep everything for himself. Although these things were valuable, many of them couldn't be bought even if he wanted them, so Kong Shinmu wouldn't hand them over. Therefore, Kong Shinmu paid the price of 330,000 gold dragon coins to keep all these things. For this, 330,000 gold dragon coins were squandered, causing Kong Shinmu to suck in a breath of cold air. This time, it was even more painful than buying things in the treasure pavilion of the 5 Extremes mysterious Ice Holy Land. That time was an equivalent transaction, but this time, it was purely a sacrifice. Of course, Kong Shinmu also knew that this was just a feeling. In reality, he had profited greatly. Not to mention 330,000 gold dragon coins, even if he had to pay double the share, he would still be willing to make this trip because it was really worth it. Most importantly, Kong Shinmu actually obtained a starry sky small world. Moreover, this was not discovered by others at all. Therefore, this time, Kong Shinmu could be said to have profited hundreds of times? More than hundreds of times. A sacred heaven and earth small world was not something that could be described with money. It was even more precious than ordinary sacred heaven and earth small world. No matter which race had it, they would definitely regard it as the most precious treasure. This was a great inheritance, and it was a sacred heaven and earth small world that could open up 12 layers of inscriptions. Just saying it was terrifying. Unfortunately, this time, besides Kong Shinmu, no one else knew about the existence of the starry sky small world. Of course, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were currently in the starry sky small world, but in reality, they didn't know that the starry sky small world belonged to Kong Shinmu. After paying 330,000 gold dragon coins, Jiang Shenwu was more or less done with the business on this side. There was nothing else to do after that, so everyone returned to the 6th zone of the chaotic battlefield. During this period, Murong Liani and Suyi kept looking for Kong Shinmu to chat and discuss some things with him. Moreover, even Yuhan of the Bone Imperial family often came to talk to Kong Shinmu. There was no doubt that this matter of the inheritance of the starry sky small world had formed an invisible bond between Kong Shinmu and other practitioners who cultivated the inheritance of the starry sky small world. Kong Shinmu originally wanted to cultivate in the 7th zone and deal with those underground creatures so that he could devour more power to comprehend. Unfortunately, his mind was not on this now. The key was that devouring these underground creatures would not necessarily directly increase his combat strength. The most important role was to accumulate, so he was not in a hurry now. First, he should go back and properly arrange the inheritance of the starry sky small world. First, Kang Xinmu absolutely trusted Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang, so he could completely tell them about the starry sky small world. Then, Kang Xinmu planned to go with them to explore the starry sky small world. Now, although Kang Xinmu had obtained the starry sky small world, he only had the right to use it, but not the right to control it. He was not clear about the general situation in the starry sky small world, so he had to explore it. If he could let everyone's inheritance of the starry sky small world reach the supreme god level in the starry sky small world, then it could be their trump card. Usually, they would act as the dragon gods, and in critical situations, they could directly use the inheritance of the starry sky small world to crush their opponents directly. The advantage of this was that they would not expose the power of the inheritance of the starry sky small world, and they could accumulate the experience and understanding of the divine dragon inheritance. After all, the main way to improve themselves was the divine dragon inheritance. No one knew whether the inheritance of the starry sky small world could really rise in the later stages. Although Kang Xinmu felt that there was no big problem, after all, he had not seen an actual example. So, before the rise of a real expert who cultivated the inheritance of the starry sky small world, Kang Xinmu would have a certain attitude of doubt. Just like that, 3 days later, Kang Xinmu and the others finally left the chaotic battlefield and completely returned to the dragon god's great world. Emperor Shi brought them directly back to the Five Extremes mysterious ice city. After returning this time, Emperor Shi did not stay with Kang Xinmu for too long. He directly went to the Five Extremes mysterious ice holy land. First, he had to help Kang Xinmu deal with the previous matter, which was the matter of Feng Baixue bringing his lackey Luoan to challenge Kang Xinmu. As a result, on the day of the challenge, Feng Baixue and Luoan received the news that Kang Xinmu had performed outstandingly in the arena battle of the Dragon Martial Continent. They were so scared that they immediately ran to the battlefield, so this time, Emperor Shi planned to directly find Feng Baixue's grandfather and let them pay the bet of 100,000 gold dragon coins. After all, Kang Xinmu was really short of money now. Regardless of whether he wanted to unlock the seal of the starry sky small world or the seal of the blood rose fan, he needed a huge amount of cultivation resources. So, Emperor Shi left just like that. As for Kang Xinmu, he brought Chu Yueqiang and stayed with the Gu family in the Five Extremes mysterious ice city. Gu Xinyue personally received the two of them, and even her father hosted a banquet for them. It could be seen that the Gu family now held Kang Xinmu in high esteem. Even Gu Xinyue's father admired Kang Xinmu very much. He almost personally sent his daughter to Kang Xinmu's room. If one were to count the gains this time, there was no doubt that Kang Xinmu was the one who had gained the most. The starry sky small world, in addition to the hazy metal, formless crystal, high-grade spatial radiant materials, high-grade spatial tranquility, star and moon pendants. Even if everything added up except the starry sky small world, it was worth at least 1.2 million. Chapter 4958. While Kang Xinmu was counting his gains, Chu Yueqiang and Gu Xinyue were naturally doing the same. For them, the biggest gain this time was the inheritance of the power of the stars. In this regard, they did not pay a share to the demon god race. However, the two women were not as rich as Kang Xinmu, who paid directly with gold dragon coins. They could only use the spatial condensed essence they obtained to pay a share. Chu Yueqiang's share was slightly less. After all, she was not in the same team as Kang Xinmu and the others. When they finally dealt with the giant statue, the reward she received was much less than that of Kang Xinmu and Gu Xinyue. The two women gave a part of their spoils to the demon god race. In the end, their gains were also considerable. But even if they had to hand over all their spoils, they felt that it was extremely worthwhile. All of this was because of the inheritance of the power of the stars. The inheritance of the power of the stars added a new possibility to their lives. Originally, Gu Xinyue's divine dragon inheritance was about to reach a bottleneck. But the inheritance of the power of the stars might allow her to continue to become stronger after reaching the bottleneck. Moreover, there seemed to be no talent requirement. Of course, there was still a talent requirement. Otherwise, why would the speed of cultivating the power of the stars vary? But Kang Xinmu did not know how the talent for cultivating the power of the stars was calculated. Late at night, Kang Xinmu lay alone on his bed, thinking about what he needed to do next. This trip to the mid-level relic was extremely rewarding, but for his current stage, it did not increase his combat power much. As for the Dragon Martial Continent, they are helping to look after the Devouring Dragon Group. There is nothing important at the moment, so I cannot think about it for the time being. Of course, I still need to find time to go back and see the situation. The growth of the Devouring Dragon Group was not that fast. Now, the members of the Devouring Dragon Group should be at a stage of improvement. For the time being, it was impossible to send them on any missions. As for the Demon God race, Sui said that he would look for me when he has time. He also said that he would bring Sui to find me. Where will they find me? They can't come to the Dragon God race's great world, right? They might send me a message, telling me where to meet them. The most likely place is the Martial Dragon Continent. Putting this matter aside for the time being, Suye's harvest from the ruins this time was also extremely huge. It was impossible for him to digest it so quickly. Moreover, Suyi was the same as Kang Xinmu. His priority was to increase the cultivation realms of the Demon God race and the Dragon God race. Now, Kang Xinmu was at the 7th level of the Dragon Emperor, 2 levels away from the peak of the Dragon Emperor, and his cultivation had not reached the peak of the 9th level of the Reincarnation Tribulation realm. There was still a long way to go before he reached the true peak of the Dragon God clan. This distance would take at least half a year to improve, and it was the kind that hadn't been consolidated yet. Now, let's sort out the composition of my strength. Kang Xinmu began to examine the components of his strength. First of all, it was the inheritance of the Dragon God clan. He had the 7th level of the inheritance of the Divine Dragon of the Dragon Emperor. The grade of the blood essence had the power of devouring. This was the source of all his strength. No matter how his strength changed in other aspects, the power of devouring was his foundation, and this was also what made him feel a little uncomfortable. This power of devouring felt a little evil, and no one knew where this power of devouring would lead him in the end. Next was the inheritance of the Demon God race. The inheritance of the Demon God race. He had obtained the inheritance bloodline of the 16-winged heavenly demon god, and could transform into the body of a 16-winged heavenly demon god. However, the strength of this inheritance was not too strong. Currently, it was only around the 4th level of the Demon Emperor realm. Moreover, whether it was in terms of demonic martial arts or demonic weapons, it was inferior to the Dragon God race in this aspect. Although he had the 3 top demonic weapons of the Void-Ripping Void Demon Blade, the Sky-Imprisoning Demon Pearl, and the Instant Demon Ring, these 3 demonic weapons had not been illuminated. Their real effects were still slightly weaker than the Phantom Ghost Book and the Great Compassion Heavenly Dragon Seal. It should be known that in the recent operation, the Great Compassion Heavenly Dragon Seal and the Phantom Ghost Book still had the function of the 3rd illuminated material that had not been used. That was the true life-saving method of Kang Xinmu, but all this time, Kang Xinmu had not encountered a situation where he could use this method. Now that the opponents he encountered were all Emperor level, they were no longer too much of a threat to him. In short, Kang Xinmu's current cultivation in the Demon God race was basically just for show. Moreover, there was currently no way for him to improve it. Unless he waited for Suyi to bring Suyi to visit him and see if there would be a turning point, let's not talk about this for now. One of the components of Kang Xinmu's strength was the inheritance of the heaven-deficient demonic dragon of ice and fire. This kind of power was the ultimate power of ice and fire. Kang Xinmu did not have much control over it at the moment. As for the power of the heaven deficient, Kang Xinmu could not steal too much of his opponent's time. As for using it to cultivate, it would be too difficult for Kang Xinmu. Once he became a supreme god, Kang Xinmu could not use the power of the heaven-deficient demonic dragon of ice and fire in battle. At most, he could only use the power of the heaven-deficient to harass his opponent. Therefore, Kang Xinmu also wanted to obtain more of the power of the heaven-deficient demonic dragon of ice and fire. All these opportunities lay in the ruins of the disordered battlefield. Or rather, if he went to deal with and devour the underground creatures in the 7th zone, he might coincidentally encounter the power of the heaven-deficient demonic dragon of ice and fire. Finally, there was the power of the star sky that Kang Xinmu had just obtained. Although it was called the power of the star sky, it was actually a kind of spatial power inheritance. For Kang Xinmu, this was the power of the inheritance that he had the highest hopes for. First, it was extremely convenient to use. He could use this inheritance in his human form, and its lethality was not weaker than other inheritance powers. Moreover, the prospects for improvement were very broad. Now that Kang Xinmu had the Starry Sky Small World, the way to improve the power of the star sky was all in the Starry Sky Small World. Kang Xinmu could enter the Starry Sky Small World to explore at any time. So now, Kang Xinmu's path was basically clear. First, he would improve the strength of the dragon god step by step. Second, he would go to the 7th zone of the disordered battlefield to try his luck. Third, he would enter the Starry Sky Small World to find a way to break through the level of the power of the star sky. Right now, Kang Xinmu felt that the things he cultivated were a little mixed up and not very good. Although each of his inheritance powers was not bad, his strongest strength was still only at the peak of the emperor level. He had not tried to deal with a true supreme god-level opponent. If he really faced a supreme god-level opponent, the current Kang Xinmu was afraid that he still lacked some effective means. Therefore, the most important thing for Kang Xinmu now was to improve his strongest strength. Therefore, it was obvious what he should do. He had to go to the Starry Sky Small World first and try to improve the power of the star sky to the supreme god level. Chapter 49-59. In this middle-level relic operation, Kang Xinmu got a lot of things that could improve himself. For example, the space condensing essence and the ancient war spirit. These two things played a great role in improving his current strength, but he did not intend to waste these things. The space condensing essence could improve a practitioner's perception and understanding of the virtual power of space. Unfortunately, Kang Xinmu's wind shadow and flowing cloud flash had reached the level of the extreme saint realm, and the starry sky inheritance had reached the peak of the emperor realm. He did not know how to improve it. Therefore, the power of swallowing the space condensing essence was not very helpful for Kang Xinmu, or it could be said that the improvement was not great, unless he began to practice another spatial dragon martial skill or magic martial skill. But now Kang Xinmu did not have time to practice other means, it was too time-consuming. Therefore, the space condensing essence could be eliminated first. As for the ancient war spirit, Kang Xinmu only had one, and he planned to use it on his future formless weapon. After coming out of the middle-level relic, Kang Xinmu had asked Emperor Shi for help to find some top 3 blacksmiths. Unfortunately, there were only a few top 3 blacksmiths in the Dragon God clan, and all of them were eccentric. Therefore, Emperor Shi was not sure if he could succeed. He could only let Kang Xinmu wait until she sent him the exact news. Only then could Kang Xinmu's formless weapon have a glimmer of hope. Therefore, this matter could not be rushed for the time being. For now, it was better to enter the starry sky small world. Therefore, the next day, Kang Xinmu directly found Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang and told them about the starry sky small world. What? Starry sky small world? It's in your palm? Gu Xinyue was dumbfounded. She could not believe what Kang Xinmu said. But when Kang Xinmu opened his left hand, and a light blue starry sky pattern appeared on his left palm. Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang had to believe it. Amazing, Shen Wu. Did you control a small world? Are all the information about the inheritance of the starry sky hidden in this small world? Gu Xinyue could not help but ask, oh right, and the demon god races Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning, are they in this small cosmos now? You're right. Kong Shinmu nodded with a smile. Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning are in the starry sky pocket world, and I know where they are going. They've been on the plane for a few days, but they haven't found the shrine yet. They've suffered quite a bit. Huh? Suffering? Chu Yueqiang was curious. What's in the small starry world? Let's go in and take a look. At the same time, let's try to find a way to let our starry sky legacy break through to the transcendent level. This was what Kong Shinmu wanted to do now. And this was also what Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang wanted to do the most after receiving the news. Originally, I wanted to consolidate my foundation and ask my father to help me find a blacksmith to forge a transcendent dragon weapon with haze metal. But now, let's go to the small starry world first. Gu Xinyue was very excited about this. Transcendent level. Compared to other dragon warriors, this advantage was too great. How cool would it be to have two inheritances? Moreover, Gu Xinyue had another guess. She said straightforwardly, by the way, Kong Shinmu, you said that if our starry sky legacy reaches the transcendent level, but our divine dragon inheritance blood essence is still at the emperor level, then can we still enter other intermediate relics? Huh. That's an interesting idea. Jiang Shenwu's interest was immediately piqued. If this was possible, they could even keep the cultivation of the dragon gods at the emperor level, and then explore those middle-level relics. They could even explore those permanent middle-level relics with the inheritance of the supreme god-level power of the starry sky. In that case, they would have a great advantage. And if they could do this at this stage, wouldn't they be able to use the same method to enter advanced relics or even rarer super relics in the future? On the surface, the level of their dragon warrior inheritance was not high, but in fact, the starry sky legacy was much higher than the dragon warrior inheritance. Could this kind of thing be done? Or would it be detected by the relics? It's a pity that we don't know how those relics detect the restrictions. Anyway, we can try next time. If it really works, we will make a lot of money. Kong Shinmu said with narrowed eyes. Anyway, we can pay attention to the news of intermediate relics. Gu Xinyue smiled slyly like a little fox. What you are thinking about will have to wait until our starry sky legacy reaches the transcendent level. Don't think so much now. Chu Yueqiang pursed her lips and smiled. Although she was a little older than Kong Shinmu and Gu Xinyue, she still looked like a young girl. After all, she was an inheritor of the Dragon Emperor level. She could almost maintain a young girl's appearance, as long as she could continue to improve the level of her dragon god inheritance. The three of them quickly made a plan and directly entered the starry sky small world from the Gu family's residence in the Five Extremes mysterious ice city. Starry sky small world. There was a continent in the starry sky small world. The front was a plain, and thousands of miles underground was dark, where bloodthirsty creatures lived. Now Kong Shinmu and the others came to the front plain. It was daytime, and the sun-shaped gem turned over the front plain, sprinkling warm sunlight. In this plain, there were sometimes mountains, rivers, and dense forests. It seemed to be full of vitality and lush greenery. Although Kong Shinmu could not control this starry sky small world, he still remembered the approximate location of the temples on the front plain. Kong Shinmu knew that if he wanted to break through to the transcendent level with the starry sky legacy, he definitely had to obtain certain resources and methods from the temples on the front plain. By the way, the three of us have come in. Where is the entrance rune of this starry sky small world? Gu Xinyue looked around and observed the environment. After ensuring that there was no danger, she asked curiously. Hearing this, Kang Shinmu raised his hand and looked at his left palm. He frowned and said, "The rune is gone. It should be left in the outside world. Will it be discovered by others?" "No, Kang Shinmu, quickly send me back to take a look." Gu Xinyue suddenly panicked. If the entrance to the Starry Sky small world was discovered, it would be a big deal. She might even be able to silence them. Chapter 4960. Therefore, Kang Shinmu could only send Gu Xinyue back first. Then, he went out after a while and brought her back. "How is it? What did you see?" Kang Shinmu asked with a smile. "I can't see the entrance to this small Starry Sky world at all. When you came out, you raised your hand and it flew from the floor to your palm." Gu Xinyue looked a little annoyed. "Why is it that you can control this small world of the Starry Sky, but I can't?" "Of course, because I was the first to cultivate the Starry Sky world to the peak Emperor level. I only spent 3 years from the beginning to the end." "Tell me, how many years did it take you?" Kang Shinmu said with a smile. "What? Only 3 years?" Gu Xinyue suddenly became a little depressed. "I think I spent 6 or 7 years at that time. Could it be that your talent in cultivating the Starry Sky world is twice as high as mine?" Kang Shinmu smiled and said nothing. Obviously, the speed of cultivating the Starry Sky world by devouring power was definitely more than twice. The reason why Kang Shinmu took half of her time was because Kang Shinmu's talent was not as good as hers. If Kang Shinmu was as talented as her, or if Gu Xinyue had the devouring power, she could have cultivated the Starry Sky world to the peak Emperor level in less than 3 years. Of course, Kang Shinmu did not think that this made him look weak. Anyway, now that he had the devouring power, he cultivated faster than others. In fact, even without the devouring power, Kang Shinmu would not be able to reach his current level, but he would definitely not be unknown. At most, it would take him more time to reach his current level. In order to raise the Starry Sky world to the Supreme God level, Gu Xinyue did not even absorb the psychedelic astral crystal for the time being and ran into the small Starry Sky world with Kang Shinmu. There were a total of 5 people in this small Starry Sky world. Kang Shinmu and the other 2, plus Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning. The 2 of them had encountered many creatures that looked easy to bully on the plane. In the end, these creatures ganged up on them and caused them to suffer a lot. In the end, they couldn't even find the location of the Starry Sky Shrine. At this time, Kang Shinmu came in with the 2 girls. He directly found them based on their location. Obviously, this was something that only Kang Shinmu could do. "Chen Chong, Wei Xiaoning, we're here. Follow us," Kang Shinmu said bluntly. When Gu Xinyue saw the 2 of them, she burst into laughter. "You 2, look so pathetic. Why are your clothes torn?" They were really being chased by those creatures that looked easy to bully. This made the 2 of them blush. It was really embarrassing to be laughed at by a beauty. However, they did not dwell on this. Instead, they asked, "Why are you here?" "Why? You're allowed to look for an opportunity to break through here, but we're not allowed to come?" Gu Xinyue covered her mouth and said with a chuckle. "You're here to look for an opportunity to break through the Starry Sky inheritance?" Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning's eyes finally lit up. The depression that they had been feeling for many days was finally swept away. "Come with me. Let's find a Starry Sky shrine first and see if there's anything recorded in it." Kang Shinmu called out to them and led the 4 of them in the direction he felt. The biggest advantage of having the entrance to the small Starry Sky world was that he could feel the various shrines in the small Starry Sky world and the location of the terrain. It was like having a map in his mind. Others could only wander around in the small Starry Sky world. Soon, Kang Shinmu brought the 4 of them to the front of a Starry Sky shrine. This Starry Sky shrine was not very tall or magnificent. After all, this was a shrine built according to the human body. In terms of scale, it was much smaller than the palaces that the mystical dragons lived in. However, in terms of design, this starry sky shrine was still very good. It even surpassed the palaces of most other races. Countless stars revolved outside the shrine. The entire shrine was hidden in the deepest part of a dense forest. It was no wonder that Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning could not find a shrine after wandering around for so long. This is one of the 12 starry sky shrines. Jiang Shenwu stood outside the divine hall and said with a frown, apart from some general information recorded in these divine halls, there doesn't seem to be any other difference between the divine halls. Let's go in and take a look. Kang Xinmu had entered a shrine before. However, he was pressed for time and did not take a closer look. This time, he could take a good look around. The 5 of them held hands and stepped into the starry sky shrine. As for the method of entry, it was naturally to condense the corresponding starry sky rune. The universal shrine wasn't the same shrine that Kang Xinmu had entered with the key symbol. This universal shrine only recorded information and nothing else. Kang Xinmu hadn't looked at it in detail at that time. Now that the 5 of them had entered together, they began to look at the information together. This starry sky divine palace is the training divine palace from level 5 to level 9 emperor level. Looks like we've come to the wrong place. After everyone looked at the information, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Kang Xinmu had no choice but to bring everyone away from this shrine and search for other shrines. Finally, after a day, Kang Xinmu led the 4 of them into the 7th starry sky shrine. This cosmic palace shrine was the 9th level of the emperor level. It was a shrine that allowed one to break through to the transcendent god level. The training divine palace is a place where we can find resources and methods to break through to the transcendent god level through the training content of this shrine. This training divine palace seems to have given us a training mission. We have to go to the marked location and search around there. It seems like we are looking for something. How can this be called training? Some of them didn't quite understand. However, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were a little scared. The marked location on the map seems to be very dangerous. I think we've seen it from afar before. It seems like a black cave. Black winds constantly blow out from the cave. I wonder what's inside. Are you guys afraid of being bullied by the creatures from outside the starry sky small world? Gu Xinyue pursed her lips and smiled. Don't worry. There are 5 of us this time. Also, she glanced at Kang Xinmu without batting an eyelid. Clearly, she meant that even if they encountered danger, Kang Xinmu could bring them away from here. It was a pity that Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning didn't know this. Chapter 4961. 4 hours later. Kang Xinmu and the other 4 came to a nearby crack in the ground. This crack was the way those bloodthirsty creatures on the other side would come over at night. It was daytime now, so the bottom of the crack was sealed. Along the way, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning told each other about what they had seen and heard in the past few days. They encountered herbivores on the plain in front of them. These creatures did not look very strong and were even very docile. Under normal circumstances, they were only curious when they saw humans and did not have a strong desire to attack. Until one day, when Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning were sparring with each other, they accidentally hit one of the herbivores that were watching the commotion with a cosmic rune. Hence, these herbivores that looked like sheep seemed to have gone mad and directly rushed towards the 2 of them in a flock. At first, they did not pay much attention to these creatures. In their eyes, these creatures looked so docile and they, who had mastered the inheritance of the starry sky, could easily kill them. However, they soon discovered that, these creatures had a strong resistance to the inheritance of the starry sky. Even if their cosmic runes exploded with all their power and bombarded these herbivores, they would not be able to cause any harm. This made the 2 of them a little dumbfounded. Before they could react, they were pressed down by the group of sheep-like creatures. They used their horns to constantly poke at them, causing them unspeakable pain. These sheep-like creatures did not seem to hurt them, but they made them flee in panic. Therefore, Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning only had the inheritance of the starry sky. When they encountered these sheep-like creatures, they could only run away. Therefore, we guessed that the creatures in this small world must have a strong resistance to the inheritance of the starry sky. If we ran around, we might be in danger. Chen Chong said gloomily, "Fortunately, you did not abandon the inheritance of the past. When you encounter such a situation, you can directly transform into the form of a divine dragon. There should be no problem. Unfortunately, this crack doesn't seem to be as big as we thought." Kang Xinmu and the others stood in front of the underground fissure and sighed. The underground fissure that appeared in front of them was just a small fissure, although it was completely possible for a human body to enter. However, if they were to transform into their dragon forms, they wouldn't be able to go down. In other words, they could only maintain their human forms after entering the underground crack. If what Chen Chong said was true, and the creatures here had a strong resistance to the power of the starry sky inheritance, they might really encounter some trouble. Of course, in his human form, he could also use the power of the divine dragon's inheritance. However, he could only use 30% of it. If something really happened, he could still give it a try. Moreover, Kang Xinmu still had the devouring power, which was a super powerful trump card. "Let's go." Kang Xinmu called out and led the four of them directly into the crack. Among the star runes, there was a silver rune that could allow people to fly in the void. It could also allow people to fly on the continent. This was a flight rune. Naturally, all five of them had mastered it. As long as it wasn't some complicated combination rune, it wasn't too difficult for them. Of course, there were many profound combination runes that none of them had been able to learn until now. When they descended into the underground fissure, the surrounding light from the sun gradually disappeared, and what appeared around them were specks of starlight. It could be seen that the underground fissure naturally contained such specks of starlight. They were bright and resplendent, but they couldn't illuminate the surroundings. Instead, they emitted a light blue glow. "We've reached the bottom of the fissure." Soon, Kang Xinmu and the others felt that they were standing on some rugged ground. This was the bottom of the underground fissure. Light blue light constantly lingered around them, but the surroundings remained in darkness. Fortunately, everyone's vision in the dark was not bad, and they could vaguely see where the others were. According to what the Temple of Experience said, we should now look for the entrance to the training ground. The entrance should be at the bottom of this underground fissure. It's best not to wait until night. At night, the underground fissure will open another entrance that connects to the starry sky plains and the dark night plains. Now, Kang Xinmu and the others began to name the various existences in the starry sky small world. For example, the front plane was called the starry sky plane, and the back, which was shrouded in darkness, was called the dark night plane. As for the dark night plane, according to Kang Xinmu's observation, it was always night. Even if the sun-shaped gem turned to that side, it couldn't bring light to that side. It seemed that the engraving of the starry sky small world had not been unlocked. Who knew how many layers of engraving had to be unlocked for the dark night plane to shine? Right now, the five of them were at the bottom of the underground fissure, searching for the entrance to the quest location. As the underground fissure was quite long, spanning hundreds of li, the five of them could only split up to search for the entrance. Whoever found the entrance to the place would directly draw a few starry runes in the void to inform the others. There was a simple combination of star runes that could be inscribed to contact others or to communicate with others. It was similar to communicating with divine will. This method was also relatively simple. As long as one had a silver star rune and a few white star runes, it would be enough. All five of them spread out and searched at the bottom of the underground fissure with complex terrain. Along the way, there was starlight. Kong Shinmu tried to touch these starlight, and found that these starlights still contained some power of the starry sky inheritance, but he didn't feel anything when he touched it. This starlight didn't seem to be an entity, nor was it some kind of energy. He tried, but he couldn't even devour the power of devouring for the time being. According to the concept of the Black Dragon's consciousness, the power of devouring could devour everything. The thing that couldn't be devoured now was that Kong Shinmu's level was not high enough. When Kong Shinmu's level increased, he would be able to devour more and more things. For Kong Shinmu, the power of devouring seemed to exist only by relying on the inheritance of the Dragon God clan. The inheritance of the Dragon God clan must be the main inheritance, while the inheritance of the power of the starry sky, although it was the inheritance of humans controlling the power of nature, could only be a secondary inheritance for Kong Shinmu. Therefore, the power of devouring must be the main inheritance. Chapter 4962. Everyone quickly gathered at Gu Xinyue's location. The terrain of the underground fissure was complex. At the bottom of the fissure, there were crisscrossing routes that extended in all directions. No one knew where they were looking for. That was until Gu Xinyue found the door. Although it was called a door, it was only in human form. It was about 100 feet high and was embedded in the stone wall of the underground fissure. If it was the body of a divine dragon, it would be a small door. This door was prepared for the inheritors of the starry sky power. If it was in the form of a divine dragon, it would be impossible for Kong Shinmu to enter. We can only enter in human form. Since this is a trial for us, the inheritance of the starry sky power should be able to handle it. Kong Shinmu said. He took the lead in condensing some starry sky runes according to the pattern on the stone door. There were even a few golden starry sky runes. Among the 5 people present, Kong Shinmu was probably the only one who had the ability to condense so many golden starry sky runes at the same time. I didn't expect there to be a requirement for opening the test temple. If I came alone, wouldn't I not even be able to open the door? Chen Chong scratched his head. It seems that I still need to accumulate more golden and silver starry sky runes. The inheritance of the starry sky power seems to focus on accumulation. Only by accumulating more starry sky runes can I use more techniques. Of course, but for now, you should go in with us. Gu Xinyue pursed her lips and said with a smile. As Kong Shinmu condensed so many golden starry sky runes, these were all learned by Kong Shinmu while he was waiting. It was not within the requirements of the inheritance of the starry sky power. It could be considered as practicing according to his own interests. Then, the entire stone door opened. What appeared in front of them was a mirror-like light blue barrier. This barrier is full of space power. Maybe we will be teleported away if we touch it. Kong Shinmu thought for a moment and said, "How about this, you guys go first and I will go last. I don't want the stone door to close once I leave. If that happens, I am afraid you guys won't be able to enter." "Alright, let's go." Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning looked at each other and nodded. Then, they walked towards the light blue mirror barrier behind the stone door. Then, the two of them disappeared from the mirror, as if they had entered the water and created a layer of ripples. How dare they? Chu Yueqiang found it funny watching from the side. After all, it is the inheritance of the starry sky force. The place that was designated for us should not be too dangerous for us cultivators of the inheritance of the starry sky. Gu Xinyue nodded and took a step forward. "Yu Chang, let's go." She brought Chu Yueqiang and crashed into the stone door, then disappeared in front of Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu didn't think too much about it. Since there was no one around, he also stepped towards the stone door and crashed into the light blue mirror-like barrier. Immediately after, he felt a wave of spatial fluctuations. When he opened his eyes again, Kong Shinmu was in a light blue crystal palace. Jiang Shenwu looked around and realized that this crystal palace was a smaller version of the crystal palace he had seen in the intermediate ruins in District 7. It looked like the paths were complicated. There were several paths in the crystal palace that he had just entered. What was this place? Kang Xinmu was puzzled, mainly because he didn't see a single person after he came in. Gu Xinyue and Chu Yueqiang were gone, and Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning who were further ahead were nowhere to be seen. It seems that this test is for a single person. If I want to pass the test and break through the starry sky force to the transcendent level, I have to complete it alone. I wonder how difficult this test is. Kang Xinmu looked around carefully. First of all, in this crystal palace, it was not convenient for him to transform into his mystical dragon form, because the entire crystal palace was only more than 10 feet tall. It was more than enough to accommodate people walking around inside, but if he transformed into his mystical dragon form, it would burst the entire palace. In that case, would he fail the test? Kang Xinmu couldn't figure it out, so unless it was absolutely necessary, it was better not to transform into his mystical dragon form. He observed the temple for a while. The training holy palace on the starry sky plane had given a test, and he had to find an item here. He didn't know the name of the item, but he knew that it was a blue crystal-like item that emitted a strong starry sky power. It seemed to be an important condition for the starry sky force to break through to the transcendent level. Perhaps he had to absorb the power within it. Since I'm looking for something, perhaps I can use the detection rune of the starry rune? Kang Xinmu thought to himself. In the starry rune, there were too many ways to use the starry sky power, and searching for something was one of them. However, the starry rune searched for something based on subtle energy sensing. As long as the thing that Kang Xinmu needed to find was emitting a different energy from the things around it, Kang Xinmu would be able to find it based on that. The combination of the starry sky detection rune was 2 golden starry runes, which happened to be something that Kang Xinmu had learned before, so he could easily condense it. Hence, he directly condensed the starry sky detection rune. 2 golden runes, 4 silver runes, and 8 white runes were condensed with the power of the starry sky. Together, they formed a light blue dot of light that looked like a meteor in front of Kang Xinmu. This dot of light was constantly flashing, and every time it flashed, a general direction would appear in Kang Xinmu's mind. It was the closest place to Kang Xinmu that emitted special energy. According to the direction, Kang Xinmu walked directly towards a crystal corridor. However, he soon encountered a problem. Halfway through the crystal corridor, a crystal door was erected. There were several starry sky runes carved on the door. The complexity of these starry sky runes was far greater than those that Kang Xinmu had learned before. I have never learned these starry sky runes before. Could it be that I need to learn these starry sky runes to open this door? Kang Xinmu thought to himself and frowned slightly. Learning starry sky runes was a very time-consuming thing. If he really needed to learn new and complicated starry sky runes to open the door, then this experience would probably take up a lot of his time. Moreover, he was only learning from them now, so there was no power for Kang Xinmu to devour. This caused Kang Xinmu's cultivation speed to slow down. However, since I am required to learn from the starry sky runes on this crystal door, can I directly devour the starry sky runes on the crystal door? However, if I don't learn it after devouring it, and if I can't digest it, there will be no original for me to observe and learn. Chapter 4963. Since he had given Kang Xinmu the ability to devour, it would be a waste if he did not use it. Moreover, judging from the current situation, this test was not a one-time thing. If Kang Xinmu failed this time, he could just come again next time. Hence, he decided to try devouring first. Then, Kang Xinmu began to release the devouring power and condensed it to cover the crystal door. As it was the devouring power in human form, the devouring speed was much slower than Kang Xinmu's full power. However, Kang Shinmu did not pursue devouring speed too much. As long as he could devour all the golden cosmic runes, it would be enough for Kang Shinmu to comprehend the mysteries within. Just like that, 3 days later, Kang Shinmu finally devoured all the golden cosmic runes on the crystal door. There were a total of 4 golden cosmic runes. If he wanted to learn to carve and comprehend the power contained within, it would take him at least a month to comprehend one of them, but now, Kang Shinmu had devoured them in 3 days. However, Kang Shinmu had only temporarily stored them in the devouring space. He had not completely comprehended them. In the words of the Black Dragon, Kang Shinmu's devouring power was not strong enough. When the devouring power was truly complete, he would be able to comprehend whatever he devoured. That would be the truly terrifying moment. Now, Kang Shinmu still had to spend time comprehending those things from the devouring space, including these 4 golden cosmic runes. For Kang Shinmu, he would need about 7 days to comprehend one of these 4 golden cosmic runes with the help of the devouring power. That would add up to a month. This was only the first test after entering the Crystal Palace, and it actually took so long. However, after learning these 4 golden cosmic runes, Kang Shinmu's strength would definitely increase. He could display more types of star rune combinations, and then make the battle style of the inheritance of the power of the starry sky more diverse, and more suitable for fighting in different environments. In comparison, what Kang Shinmu could comprehend in a month, it would take others 3 to 4 months to comprehend. This speed was already quite fast. Time flew by in the Crystal Temple. Half a year later, Kang Shinmu continued to study and comprehend the cosmic runes in the Crystal Divine Palace. There were more combinations, more techniques, and he was getting more and more familiar with them. Most importantly, after half a year, Kang Shinmu finally found an astral blue crystal hidden in the depths of the Crystal Temple. This was the crystal that contained the power of the starry sky. It could allow Kang Shinmu's starry sky legacy to break through to the transcendent level. And after the starry sky inheritance broke through to the transcendent god level, the star runes used would have a certain spirituality, which would increase the power of any combination of these star runes by 2 or 3 times. That was an extremely terrifying increase. Kang Shinmu directly swallowed this star crystal. And after he spent 7 days digesting the power of the star crystal, he felt that the power of the starry sky inheritance in his body had finally transformed. And most importantly, after reaching the transcendent god level of the starry sky inheritance, he could master more star runes, and even higher level star runes. Above the white, silver, and gold runes, there were also crystal runes. Currently, Kang Shinmu had not mastered a single crystal rune. But the truly powerful transcendent god level of the starry sky inheritance lay in the use of crystal runes. Until now, Kang Shinmu had mastered a total of 3,000 white star runes, 800 silver star runes, and 15 gold star runes. When these star runes were combined, they could explode with very strong and diverse combat power. But Kang Shinmu still had not reached the peak emperor level of the starry sky inheritance. After all, in the starry sky inheritance, there were a total of more than 100 types of gold star runes. In total, it would take at least more than 10 years to completely master them. And this was under the situation where Kang Shinmu used his devouring power to absorb and comprehend all of them. If it were someone else, they would probably not be able to master all of them even after a few decades. Currently, Jiang Shenwu had cultivated 15 golden cosmic runes, all of which were the main golden cosmic runes related to combat. Therefore, he could cast some mainstream starry sky inheritance techniques, which were more than enough to deal with the enemy. But if he could master more gold star runes, Kang Shinmu's strength would definitely be stronger. For example, some star rune combination attack techniques would have 1 gold star rune, 4 silver star runes, and 16 white star runes. But in fact, some of the silver and white star runes could be replaced. If Kang Shinmu used 2 gold star runes to replace 2 of them, the power of the techniques he used would be at least 2 or 3 times stronger. This was the necessity of learning more star runes. Moreover, Kang Xinmu had not even learned all the white star runes. There were more than 10,000 types of white star runes. If Kang Xinmu devoured these star runes, he would be able to comprehend one in almost 2 hours. But there were too many of them, so Kang Xinmu had not cultivated too many of them. So many star runes, it's really a headache. Fortunately, now that I have learned the crystal star runes, the upper limit of my strength has increased a lot. After obtaining the starry sky crystal, Kang Xinmu left the crystal palace. The others had not come out yet, because Kang Xinmu did not feel the marks they left behind. It took me more than half a year to break through to the transcendent grade. Wouldn't it take me several years to advance from the transcendent grade to the supreme grade? Kang Xinmu smiled bitterly, but there was nothing he could do. There was no inheritance that could be achieved overnight. Perhaps when Kang Xinmu's devouring power reached the peak level, as the Black Dragon consciousness had said, he would be able to comprehend whatever he devoured, and then he would be able to quickly master some kind of inheritance. But at this stage, even Kang Xinmu was only a few times faster than others, so he could not be allowed to improve quickly. The growth of strength ultimately depended on the accumulation of daily life. For example, the most important thing for this star inheritance was to study star runes. Kang Xinmu had a feeling that if he did not spend all his time on this, his attainments in this aspect might be surpassed by Chen Chong and Wei Xiaoning. Chapter 4964. From then on, Kang Xinmu finally had supreme god-level combat power. Moreover, he did not need to condense any body to be able to use supreme god-level techniques with his human body. In order to become stronger, Kang Xinmu had to learn the 3 basic crystal runes. Kang Xinmu found a starry sky temple on the starry sky plain. He remembered that the crystal runes were recorded in this starry sky temple. In order to enter this starry sky temple, one had to reach the supreme god-level inheritance. Therefore, Kang Xinmu had not entered before. However, there was a crystal rune symbol at the entrance of this temple, so Kang Xinmu went straight to it. Kang Xinmu stepped into the temple, found the 3 basic crystal runes, and directly devoured them. This way, it was very easy for Kang Xinmu to learn and cultivate star runes, but it would also take a long time. The appearance of the crystal runes made the power of the starry sky inheritance even stronger. In about a month, Kang Xinmu could completely learn how to condense a crystal rune. 3 months later, Kang Xinmu finally learned how to condense 3 basic crystal runes. This period of time was considered very long, but it did not seem to be much in the process of cultivating the power of the starry sky inheritance. After learning how to condense 3 basic crystal runes, Kang Xinmu's combat power continued to rise. Right now, he was only at the first level of the Supreme God level. If he wanted to advance to the second level of the Supreme God level, he needed to increase the total amount of the starry sky power in his body and improve his basic strength. At this time, the previous space condensing essence and high-level space condensing crystal could be used. Kang Xinmu directly devoured and absorbed the power of a complete space condensing crystal. This took him about half a month, and then he directly broke through to the second level of the Supreme God level. This inheritance cultivation is really like a dragon. Everything has been prepared for us. Kang Xinmu was now very sad. Back then, the power of the starry sky inheritance looked very strong, so why did it perish? Why did they have the time to leave behind their legacies in the chaotic battlefield after their demise? All of these were unsolved mysteries. At this stage, no one could know, not even the top big shots of the dragon gods. When Kang Xinmu broke through to level 2 of the transcendent stage and learned 3 types of crystal star runes, Kang Xinmu felt that his combat power had reached at least 5 times that of when he was at peak emperor stage. I just don't know how strong I am compared to a dragon martial artist of the same level. Kang Xinmu hadn't tried it before, so he didn't know how strong he was. However, the demonic god ancestor's consciousness still gave Kang Xinmu a reference. According to the current situation, if you raise the dragon god tribe's cultivation to the peak of emperor level, your combat power will be about half of the inheritance of the starry sky power. Also, if your dragon god tribe's cultivation directly breaks through to the first level of the transcendent god realm, your combat power will be about the same as now. In other words, Kang Xinmu was still lacking something. The inheritance of the starry sky power was actually similar to other top-notch inheritances. As long as one had enough power, it would definitely not be weaker than other inheritances. Then, here came the key. Kang Xinmu still didn't have a weapon suitable for the inheritance of the starry sky power. Next, Kang Xinmu flipped through the ancient books in the Starry Sky Temple and finally learned that among the tribes that inherited the Starry Sky power, there was also a saying about forging weapons. The weapons they forged were called Starry Sky Divine Weapons. These divine weapons could be attached with some star runes. Excellent blacksmiths could embed crystal star runes into the Starry Sky Divine Weapons. This kind of Starry Sky Divine Weapon could increase the strength of the inheritors of the Starry Sky power by several times. It was a pity that Kang Xinmu didn't have the time to learn how to forge a Starry Sky Divine Weapon. However, without a Starry Sky Divine Weapon, Kang Xinmu's battle strength in the inheritance of the Starry Sky power would be much lower. Therefore, he directly searched for information in the Starry Sky Temple and decided to explore some palaces that contained Starry Sky Divine Weapons. These palaces were still located at the bottom of the cracks in the ground on the Starry Sky Plain. Once he passed the test of these palaces, Kang Xinmu would be able to obtain a Starry Sky Divine Weapon. This could be considered the most precious treasure that the inheritors of the Starry Sky power had left for Kang Xinmu and the others. Therefore, while others were still cultivating and trying to advance to the transcendent grade, Kang Xinmu had already taken the lead in searching for the palaces of the Starry Sky power. About 7 days later, Kang Xinmu found a palace of the Starry Sky power. Then, he stepped into it. Alone, he explored the palace of the Starry Sky power. In this palace, he mainly fought with various Starry Sky statues. These statues mainly tested Kang Xinmu's understanding and mastery of the Starry Sky runes. On the other hand, although Jiang Xinwu had directly devoured the comprehension, this kind of comprehension was completely inherited from the comprehension of the predecessors. Compared to what he had comprehended and learned on his own, it was more pure and orthodox. Under such circumstances, there was no problem for Kang Xinmu to pass these tests. In the end, it was very easy for Kang Xinmu to use the Starry Sky runes to defeat 9 Starry Sky statues and successfully pass the test. This test temple finally brought Kang Xinmu a transcendent grade Starry Sky Divine Weapon. Starfall Blade. The transcendent grade Starry Sky Divine Weapon, Starfall Blade, was a short blade. When Kang Xinmu held it in his hand, he could feel the flowing Starry Sky power in it. There were hundreds of Starry Sky runes in the Starfall Blade, including a crystal rune and 4 golden runes. Kang Xinmu tried to activate these runes and found that the power of the Starfall Blade was directly transferred to him, increasing the total amount of his Starry Sky power by 3 times. The crystal rune in the Starfall Blade is a basic strength rune. It is a rune that can increase the strength of the Starry Sky power. The 4 golden runes are amplifying this crystal rune correspondingly. In other words, this Starfall Blade purely increases the total amount of my Starry Sky power and does not improve my other aspects. However, it seems that the inheritance of the Starry Sky power does not need to improve other aspects. It does not need to be divided into offensive and defensive battle runes like other inheritance weapons. This is because the battle method of the inheritance of the Starry Sky power relies on the Starry Sky runes, which can be combined to produce different effects. Attack, defense, concealment. As long as the Starry Sky power is stronger, the effect of these methods will naturally be stronger. After obtaining the Starfall Blade, Kong Shinmu let the demon god ancestor make an estimation. Chapter 4965. Even if Kong Shinmu cultivated the inheritance of the dragon gods to the peak of emperor class, his strength would not be comparable to the current inheritance of the power of the starry sky. This was because the inheritance of the power of the starry sky that Kong Shinmu had obtained was the strongest and most orthodox. The cultivation resources he obtained were the most precious and effective. This was equivalent to a peerless expert nurturing his own descendant. In fact, it was even more exaggerated than this, because the inheritance of the starry sky was left behind by a great race from back then. How many peerless experts did that race have? It was hard to imagine that the inheritance of the power of the starry sky left behind by such experts was the best in the world. Therefore, it was not surprising that Kong Shinmu could have such an improvement. After proficiently passing the test of the God Weapon Shrine, Kong Shinmu obtained the Starfall Blade. Although he did not know its grade, judging from its power, it was probably the strongest Supreme Divine Grade Starry Sky Soldier. This was a great bargain for Kong Shinmu. It was equivalent to Kong Shinmu obtaining a top-notch Supreme Divine Dragon weapon when he broke through to the Supreme Divine Grade Dragon Warrior. What did this mean? This was something worth hundreds of thousands of gold dragon coins. In fact, it could not even be bought with hundreds of thousands of gold dragon coins. Immediately after that, Kong Shinmu discovered that he could use the Starfall Blade to illuminate it. The materials used for illumination were none other than those he had obtained before, such as the Starfall Gemstone, the Brilliant Gemstone, and so on. There were also ordinary and high-level space illumination materials. The Starfall Gemstone seems to be effective. High-level and ordinary space illumination materials are also useful. In that case, why don't I just illuminate it directly? Jiang Shenwu felt like he was about to explode. He simply couldn't imagine what kind of terrifying power the Starfall Blade possessed. There are not many materials that can enhance the Starfall Blade. The Brilliant Gemstone is completely useless. But the Starfall Gemstone and space illumination materials are useful. I wonder how many times the Starfall Blade can shine. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. First, he dazzled the Starfall Blade once, using a high-grade dazzling spatial material. Kong Shinmu only had one of these materials, but he definitely wouldn't regret using it. This was because the high-grade spatial material could double the total amount of Starfall Blade. Ordinary dazzling spatial materials could only increase it by around 50%. Apart from that, there were also startling gemstones and void gemstones. These were all useful, but unfortunately, Kong Shinmu did not have any on him right now, so he could only wait until he returned. Moreover, such a good space soldier, even if he wanted to transform it, he would need to use top-grade materials, such as high-grade Sky Startling Rosetone or high-grade Void Rosetone. If all three were to be used, the Starfall Blade's amplification effect on Kong Shinmu would be at least 3 times stronger. That would be equivalent to Kong Shinmu raising his legacy grade by another level. Right now, Kong Shinmu had yet to consolidate his Transcendent Grade Stage 2, so he couldn't raise it to Stage 3. Under such circumstances, transforming the Starfall Blade was his best and most convenient choice. The others haven't come out yet, but it's about time for me to leave. I'll go to the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land to see if I can find any high-grade dazzling material. Right now, although Kong Shinmu was almost penniless, he still had a lot of spatial essence and dazzling spatial materials on him. They could all be exchanged for gold dragon coins, and if he sold them all, he would at least get hundreds of thousands of gold dragon coins. Buying high-grade startling gemstones and void gemstones wouldn't be too much of a problem. Therefore, Kong Shinmu first observed the situation in the Starry Sky Pocket world. When he didn't find anything strange, he decided to leave the Starry Sky Pocket world. 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice City, Gu Family Residence. In the courtyard where Kong Shinmu lived, a blue rune pattern appeared on the ground. This was the entrance to the Starry Sky Pocket World. The appearance of the rune pattern was accompanied by the appearance of Kong Shinmu. He had stayed in the Starry Sky Pocket World for more than half a year. Now that he was out, he really felt like he had seen the light of day again. Although there were sunrises and sunsets in the Starry Sky Pocket World, and there were many creatures like the Starry Sheep, there was no one else. Even Gu Xinyue, Chu Yueqiang, and the others who had entered with him had been training in the Temple of Trials. They hadn't been seen since they entered together. Kong Shinmu wasn't worried about their safety, but the Gu family residence seemed to be in a mess. Kong Shinmu narrowed his eyes. They hadn't been back for more than half a year, and they didn't leave any news in advance. He was afraid that the Gu family residents would really think that they had met with an accident. After all, the Starry Sky Pocket World was a normal small world, not the accelerated training space in the mid-level relics. Therefore, more than half a year had passed in the Starry Sky Pocket World, and more than half a year had passed in the outside world of the Dragon Gods. During this time, he didn't know if anything had happened to the Gu family. Gu Xinyue didn't leave any news. Could it be that the Gu family residents now thought that Gu Xinyue had met with an accident? This was also possible. Therefore, Kong Shinmu immediately got up. He felt that it was necessary to go to the master of the Gu family and explain Gu Xinyue's current situation clearly. Anyway, Gu Xinyue wasn't in danger. However, if she wanted to reach the level of the Starry Sky inheritance that Kong Shinmu had now, it would take at least a year. Moreover, the test seemed to be unstoppable. Once she gave up halfway, all her previous efforts would be wasted. If she wanted to break through to the Supreme God level next time, she would have to start all over again. Therefore, Kong Shinmu had to help her explain. As for Chu Yueqiang, Kong Shinmu could just tell Emperor Shi the Divine Dragon and let her pass the message to the Dragon of Calamity. After all, Chu Yueqiang was a person cultivated by the Donghuang Yangwu College of the Dragon of Calamity. It wasn't good to not see her for a long time. It was better to inform her. Kong Shinmu thought about it and walked out of the courtyard where he lived. He could see that the courtyard seemed to have been cleaned all the time. Even though he hadn't been back for more than half a year, it was still clean and spotless. He left the courtyard and went to the front hall of the Gu family residence. Before he stepped through the door of the front hall, he heard people talking in the front hall from afar. They seemed to be discussing things like marriage and disappearance. Could it be that someone wanted to propose marriage to Gu Xinyue, but Gu Xinyue had disappeared? Kong Shinmu frowned slightly and directly stepped into the front hall. With Kong Shinmu's identity, there was naturally no problem entering the front hall. However, when he appeared, the two young Gu family guards in the front hall brightened up. It was obvious that they were pleasantly surprised. Kong Shinmu had finally returned. Chapter 4966. Unfortunately, they did not see Gu Xinyue. Kong Shinmu barged into the front hall alone and saw the familiar head of the Gu family, who was also Gu Xinyue's father, talking to a young man in the front hall. Young Master Qing Tian, I understand the situation on your side. However, my daughter hasn't appeared since she went missing. We can't do anything about your proposal. The head of the Gu family said with a bitter smile. Uncle Gu, you must be joking. The young man was elegant and had an extraordinary aura. Moreover, it was obvious that he had strong combat power. He was completely different from the young dragon martial artists that Kong Shinmu had seen before. This guy was actually at the level of Super Shenron. As for which level of Super Shenron he was, Kong Shinmu did not know. However, no matter what, this guy seemed to be here to propose to Gu Xinyue. How could Kong Shinmu agree? Although Kong Shinmu did not have any clear feelings for Gu Xinyue, they had done something before after all. How could he watch someone propose to Gu Xinyue? Young Master Qing Tian continued, Uncle Gu, I, Zhao Qing Tian, have come to propose to Warm Moon sincerely. No matter how long she has been missing, even if it's 100 years, I will still wait for her. I will continue waiting. It sounded very emotional, but it was a pity that the head of the Gu family did not seem to agree. Moreover, it seemed that this was not the first time young Master Qing Tian had come. The head of the Gu family seemed to have been troubled for a long time. Therefore, Kang Xinmu did not wait for the head of the Gu family to reply. He walked forward and said, Zhao Qing Tian, young Master Qing Tian. Are you here to propose to Gu Xinyue? I'm sorry, but I'm afraid Gu Xinyue doesn't want to marry you. In fact, when Kang Xinmu stepped into the front hall, Zhao Qing Tian had already sensed him. However, he sensed that the person was only a level 7 emperor-level young man, so he didn't pay much attention to him. After all, he was already a supreme god-level existence, a super Shenron. As a super Shenron, why would he care about a mere emperor-level junior? Although he wasn't too old, probably only 40 or 50 years old, in his eyes, Kang Xinmu was just a junior. Therefore, he didn't pay much attention to Kang Xinmu. However, to his surprise, Kang Xinmu said that Gu Xinyue didn't want to marry him. This was simply audacious. Kang Xinmu. At this time, the head of the Gu family finally stood up. When he saw Kang Xinmu, his eyes were filled with surprise. You're that Kang Xinmu? At this time, young Master Qing Tian sized up Kang Xinmu and didn't flare up for the time being. Initially, he couldn't recognize Kang Xinmu's identity. However, after knowing Kang Xinmu's identity, he calmed down and wasn't so angry anymore. After all, in terms of his relationship with Gu Xinyue, it seemed that Kang Xinmu was indeed very close. However, they probably weren't a couple. All along, Gu Xinyue had never been close to any man. Kang Xinmu was an exception, but she hadn't been particularly intimate with him. Therefore, young Master Qing Tian was a little excited now. He had a gratified smile on his face. Xinwu, you finally appeared. I wonder where Warm Moon is now. Did she come back with you? I wasn't the one who kidnapped Warm Moon. Why would she come back with me? Kang Xinmu shook his head and said calmly, she's currently cultivating in a secret place. She's trying to break through to the supreme god level, so she didn't have time to come back. Please forgive her, Uncle Gu. It's okay, it's okay. But when will she come back? The head of the Gu family asked worriedly. I don't know. Maybe a year, maybe 2. Kang Xinmu said to the head of the Gu family with a smile. It doesn't matter if she comes back in a year or 2. We can get married first. Zhao Qing Tian said slowly. These words put the head of the Gu family in a difficult position. As for Kang Xinmu, he had nothing to worry about. After all, he had an existence like Emperor Shi and the Divine Dragon behind him. No matter who he offended, there would be no problem. Moreover, he wasn't the one who wanted to offend anyone. It was Zhao Qing Tian who had been causing trouble and harassing the head of the Gu family. In that case, even if Kang Xinmu taught him a lesson, no one would say anything. Therefore, Kang Xinmu glanced at him and said coldly, am I not clear enough? Young Master Qing Tian, Gu Xinyue doesn't want to marry you. If you want to marry her, please get her permission before coming. Don't cause trouble here. How could he arrange the wedding before anyone else arrived? Zhao Qing Tian definitely had some ulterior motives. Although he didn't know what he was plotting, Kang Xinmu couldn't let him succeed. Zhao Qingtian's face darkened when he heard Kang Xinmu's rude words. This guy was very calm just now, but after hearing Kang Xinmu's words, his face darkened. Kang Xinmu, didn't you say that she would only come back in a year or 2? How do you want me to get her permission? I don't know why you're so eager to marry her. Kang Xinmu narrowed his eyes. Perhaps it's because I heard that we obtained a brand new inheritance in the intermediate relic in the 7th area? It's rare to see a dragon martial artist with 2 inheritances. Once you marry her, you might have extraordinary achievements in the future. These words seem to have hit young Master Qingtian's weak spot. Obviously, this was the guy's plan. Why did he insist on proposing to Gu Xinyue at this time? What other reason could there be? Zhao Qingtian, I don't care who's backing you. In short, if you want to marry her, you have to get her permission. Otherwise, don't pester her endlessly. Kang Xinmu said faintly. This was fair. From Kang Xinmu's current position, he couldn't say anything else. In short, it depended on Gu Xinyue's choice. However, Kang Xinmu knew very well that Gu Xinyue wouldn't choose a guy like Zhao Qingtian. Although this guy was already at the level of a super Shenron, he wasn't young. He was at least 40 or 50 years old. Based on Gu Xinyue's character, how could she like such an bold guy? Of course, young Master Qingtian might be a good husband candidate for many girls, but this was definitely not the case for Gu Xinyue. No matter how one looked at it, there was no reason for Gu Xinyue to choose Zhao Qingtian. Brat, you sure talk big. However, you dare to challenge me just because you're at the 7th level of the Emperor tier inheritance? Zhao Qingtian snorted coldly. He knew that he couldn't win against Kang Xinmu. After all, Kang Xinmu had the support of Emperor Shi. He couldn't force himself to fight against Kang Xinmu. Therefore, he could only suggest coldly, Kang Xinmu, I said that you are not qualified to interfere in this matter. Otherwise, let's have a fight. If you don't dare, get lost now. He wanted to provoke Kang Xinmu to have a fight with him, but he felt that it was impossible for Kang Xinmu to have a fight with him. After all, he was at the level of a super Shenron, and Kang Xinmu was only at the level 7 Emperor tier. No matter how amazing Kang Xinmu was, it was nothing to Zhao Qingtian. After all, a Super Shenron and a Dragon Emperor were not on the same level. If Kang Xinmu was provoked to have a fight with him, then he could teach this kid a lesson. However, he felt that Kang Xinmu wouldn't agree. Chapter 4967. Zhao Qingtian never thought that Kang Xinmu would agree to his challenge. After all, he thought that he was much stronger than Kang Xinmu. He wasn't an idiot like Luoan, who ran away after challenging Kang Xinmu. Zhao Qingtian was a true 6th-class disciple in the Holy Land of 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice, and he had been a 6th-class disciple for many years. A 6th-class disciple had the combat power of the 1st to 3rd stage of the Super Divine Dragon. Zhao Qingtian was considered very strong among the 6th-class disciples, and he was now at the 3rd stage of the Super Divine Dragon. Therefore, under normal circumstances, he was indeed much stronger than Kang Xinmu, who was at the 7th stage of the Emperor stage. However, he didn't know how strong Kang Xinmu was now. And Kang Xinmu really needed an opponent to test the combat power of his Starry Sky inheritance. After all these improvements, he hadn't officially fought with anyone yet. This time, Zhao Qingtian was a very good opportunity. Okay, then let's have a challenge. We don't have to pick the time. How about today? Kang Xinmu narrowed his eyes. Zhao Qingtian, let's make this clear. If you lose today's challenge, don't ever step into the Gu family's residence, let alone mention the marriage proposal. If I lose, I won't care about your marriage proposal to Gu Xinyue. What do you think? Kang Xinmu's words caught Zhao Qingtian and the head of the Gu family off guard. They didn't expect that Kang Xinmu would actually agree to this challenge. Wasn't this situation a little strange? Could it be that Kang Xinmu already had the strength of the 3rd stage of the Super Divine Dragon? No, this was impossible. Zhao Qingtian shook his head before a sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth. He was sure that Jiang Shenwu was deliberately mystifying things. Kang Xinmu, who was only at the 7th stage of the Emperor stage, dared to challenge him? The head of the Gu family quickly stood up and said to Kong Shinmu, "Brother Kong Shinmu, this matter can be discussed at length. There's no hurry. According to what you said, it won't be too late to discuss this matter after Warm Moon comes out of seclusion." The head of the Gu family felt that Kong Shinmu had great potential. Now that he wanted to help the Gu family, it would be good for him to step forward and buy time for Kong Shinmu. After all, Kong Shinmu's talent was too high. In such a short period of time, he had reached the 7th stage of the Emperor stage from the 3rd stage of the Emperor stage. This was simply rapid progress. Therefore, if Kong Shinmu was given another year or two, he might really be able to reach the level of the Super Divine Dragon and compete with Zhao Qingtian. But now, the head of the Gu family felt that Kong Shinmu was still too inexperienced. He was indeed too inexperienced. He was very clear about the difference between the 7th stage of the Emperor stage and the 3rd stage of the Super Divine Dragon. Of course, the current head of the Gu family could definitely defeat Zhao Qingtian. However, the head of the Gu family was an elder. How could an elder attack a junior without a proper reason? If it was an ordinary person who insisted on pestering him endlessly, the head of the Gu family would definitely be able to get rid of him with a few moves. However, the crux of the matter was that the head of the Gu family couldn't afford to offend the person behind Zhao Qingtian. Hence, such a situation had occurred. Upon hearing the words of the head of the Gu family, Kong Shinmu said to him sternly, "Head of the Gu family, don't worry. I have confidence in today's challenge. Zhao Qingtian, if you dare to accept the challenge, let's go outside the city. How about that? I'd like to see how long you're going to be so stubborn." Zhao Qingtian sneered. He flicked his sleeves and walked out. At the door, he turned to look at Kong Shinmu and said, "Let's go. Let's go outside the city and have a battle. I'll let you know the difference between you and me. In the future, don't bother yourself with such things if you can. Today's challenge is also a lesson for you." After saying that, he flew out of the city and transformed into a dragon. He didn't take the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice City seriously at all. His backer was very strong. He was a senior member of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land and an unparalleled existence. Hence, Zhao Qingtian's current status was much higher than that of Kong Shinmu. After all, he was already a super divine dragon. It could be said that Zhao Qingtian's current strength was much stronger than that of Zhuo Xiaofan, the dean of Donghuang Yanggu College. Zhuo Xiaofan might not be able to withstand 2 moves from him. After all, Zhuo Xiaofan had just become a super divine dragon. On the other hand, not only was Zhao Qingtian's cultivation higher, but he was also much stronger than Zhuo Xiaofan in terms of techniques. The head of the Gu family couldn't stop him. Kong Shinmu followed Zhao Qingtian and flew out. However, Kong Shinmu didn't transform into a divine dragon. Hence, his speed was slower. The head of the Gu family could only follow along with the rest of the Gu family. Along the way, many passers-by noticed the situation and wanted to watch. Hence, they followed along. Soon, everyone understood the situation. It turned out that Kong Shinmu, who was a level 7 martial emperor, wanted to challenge young master Zhao Qingtian, who was a super divine dragon. One had to know that young master Zhao Qingtian's name was well known. He had always had the highest status among the younger generation in the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land. It was even said that Feng Baixue was Zhao Qingtian's admirer. Thus, the news of this battle quickly spread, even reaching the 5 Extremes Dark Ice Holy Land. Hence, more people came to the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice City to watch the duel between Kong Shinmu and Zhao Qingtian. Soon, some people with high statuses appeared in the crowd. For example, Feng Baixue was extremely angry with Kong Shinmu. This was because she had left the Five Extremes' mysterious Ice Holy Land to go to the frontlines to avoid Kong Shinmu's debt collection. After all, when Kong Shinmu challenged Luoan, she realized that Luoan was definitely not a match for Kong Shinmu. Hence, she slipped away with Luoan and the rest. Previously, she came back because Kong Shinmu hadn't appeared for a long time. Unexpectedly, the last time she came back, she met Emperor Shi's mystical dragon. Then, Emperor Shi's mystical dragon went to look for her maternal grandfather, who was a young elder of the Five Extremes' mysterious Ice Holy Land. Although her maternal grandfather was considered a high-ranking member of the Five Extremes' mysterious Ice Holy Land, he wasn't a supreme powerhouse. He was only a peak super divine dragon. Compared to Emperor Shi's mystical dragon, his status was still much lower. Hence, even if Emperor Shi's mystical dragon didn't say what the matter was, the young elder didn't dare to play dumb. He directly asked his subordinates to apologize to Emperor Shi's mystical dragon. It was a total of 200,000 gold dragon coins. This was an actual 200,000 gold dragon coins. However, in reality, Kong Shinmu had bought more than 200,000 gold dragon coins from the treasure pavilion previously. However, since he had taken out 200,000 gold dragon coins, it wasn't convenient for Emperor Shi's mystical dragon to pursue the matter. Chapter 4968. Therefore, Feng Baixue, who lost the gold dragon coins and was taught a lesson by her grandfather, had a deep grudge against Kong Shinmu. When she heard that Kong Shinmu was going to challenge young Master Zhao Qingtian, she rushed over immediately. One must know that Zhao Qingtian was Feng Baixue's lover. She had always regarded him as her Prince Charming. Recently, she heard that Zhao Qingtian had been pursuing Gu Xinyue of the Gu family in the Five Extremes' mysterious Ice City. He even persistently proposed to her. This made Feng Baixue extremely jealous. Feng Baixue was a fifth-class disciple, and she knew Gu Xinyue from the start. Moreover, Gu Xinyue's talent in combat was stronger than hers. She had become a sixth-class disciple earlier than her. This made Feng Baixue envious and jealous of Gu Xinyue. Now that Zhao Qingtian was involved, she hated Gu Xinyue even more. She had long felt that Gu Xinyue would become her rival, but she didn't expect it to come true. However, this Kong Shinmu seems to have an intimate relationship with Gu Xinyue. Feng Baixue arrived at the place where Kong Shinmu and Zhao Qingtian were going to fight. She looked at the crowd of twos and threes within a radius of 100 miles. She couldn't help but reveal a delighted expression. Today, Kong Shinmu was going to be humiliated, and he might even lose his life. Kong Shinmu and Gu Xinyue had an intimate relationship. Feng Baixue was very willing to see Kong Shinmu lose and make Kong Shinmu and Gu Xinyue suffer. However, once Kong Shinmu lost, Zhao Qingtian could continue to propose to Gu Xinyue. Forget it. It's young Master Zhao's freedom to propose to whoever he wants. How can a mere Kong Shinmu stop him? Since young Master Zhao's proposal can't be changed, then today's duel is just a performance by young Master Zhao. This Kong Shinmu is asking to be humiliated. Feng Baixue quickly calmed her emotions and treated today's battle as a farce that would cause Kong Shinmu great pain. After all, if Kong Shinmu failed, he would have to watch Gu Xinyue marry Zhao Qingtian. This guy must be in pain, right? Unfortunately. Today, Kong Shinmu did not expect to lose at all. Moreover, he did not care about what kind of people were in the crowd. To him, Feng Baixue was just a passerby in his life. There was no need for him to care about her. Moreover, within a radius of 100 miles, there were crowds of twos and threes. There were at least tens of thousands of people. With so many people, how could Kong Shinmu have the time to observe them one by one? Therefore, in the field, in the vast open space outside the city, Kong Shinmu and Zhao Qingtian stood opposite each other. As for the master of the Gu family, he stood aside and said, "I'll be the referee for you. In this duel, you're not allowed to hurt or kill anyone." With his strength, there was no problem for him to be the referee. If Kong Shinmu was really not strong enough to defeat Zhao Qingtian, then he could save Kong Shinmu in time. The master of the Gu family was sure that if no one intervened, Kong Shinmu would definitely be killed by Zhao Qingtian. Therefore, he set the rules in advance. Unfortunately, not only was Zhao Qingtian unhappy about this rule, but Kong Shinmu was also unhappy. Master of the Gu family, we're not allowed to hurt anyone. Let's forget about this, shall we? Kong Shinmu coughed and said with some embarrassment, "If we really fight at our level, it's not certain whether we'll hurt anyone or not. In this kind of duel, injuries are inevitable. I believe that young Master Zhao and I have the same opinion. It doesn't matter if you're injured, right?" Zhao Qingtian snorted coldly. "It's not just injured. If you have the ability, it doesn't matter even if you kill me. I promise that no one will cause you trouble." "Really?" Jiang Shenwu narrowed his eyes and countered with a question. However, he quickly shook his head and sighed, "It's a pity. If I really kill you, it's not up to you to decide whether or not someone will come looking for trouble with me. Don't you think so? So, it's better to keep you alive." Kong Shinmu shook his head and said to the master of the Gu family, "Master of the Gu family, it doesn't matter if we're injured, but I won't kill young Master Zhao Qingtian." "Okay, that's the rule. You can start the fight." Now, he really didn't know if he could control the power of the Starry Sky inheritance. If he used too much strength, it was very likely that he would seriously injure Zhao Qingtian. Therefore, Kong Shinmu asked the master of the Gu family to keep an eye on Zhao Qingtian and not let him die. The master of the Gu family didn't know why Kong Shinmu made such a request. Didn't Kong Shinmu know that the master of the Gu family was protecting him? No, of course, Kong Shinmu knew, but Kong Shinmu was not afraid of Zhao Qingtian with his own strength. Zhao Qingtian snorted coldly. "Kong Shinmu, I can see that you're very confident. However, confidence and arrogance are different. To be honest, even if you obtain the Starry Sky inheritance, it's impossible for you to cross such a big gap to fight with me. You said that you won't kill me. Today, I also promise not to kill you. I will only teach you a lesson, an unforgettable lesson." In terms of aura, neither side was weaker than the other. But now, among the surrounding onlookers, everyone was pointing at Kong Shinmu and felt that there was something wrong with him. Kong Shinmu was clearly only at the 7th level of the Emperor Tier Divine Dragon inheritance, but he actually dared to challenge Zhao Qingtian, who was at the 3rd level of the Super Divine Dragon. Not only was he bold, but he also seemed to have some mental problems. He obviously couldn't beat him, moreover, he was so arrogant before the fight. Once he lost, wouldn't it be a great humiliation? In any case, among the onlookers, no one was optimistic about Kong Shinmu. Of course, there were still a few people who knew Kong Shinmu better and were especially optimistic about Kong Shinmu. Even Kong Shinmu didn't realize that there were some familiar faces in the crowd. It was just that he hadn't seen them for a long time. A few of them were standing together. They were Kong Shinmu's former teammates in the Dragon Martial Continent. Xiao Bai, Ran Ran, Xiao Yuhua, and Liang Xiao. The 4 of them had entered a basic ruin to explore and gained quite a good harvest. Just because of this, they were recognized by some powerhouses of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land. A few days ago, they passed the test of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land and became a 4th-class disciple of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land. Being a 4th-class disciple was an affirmation of their strength. After all, they were still at the 4th level of the Dragon Emperor realm. They had only increased their cultivation realm, and there was not much improvement in the quality of the Divine Dragon's inheritance blood essence. This was because they still wanted to explore a basic ruin again. This was the best way for them to increase their strength. Once they broke through the grade of the Divine Dragon Inheritance and reached the 5th level of the Dragon Emperor, they wouldn't be able to explore a mid-level ruin anymore. The difference in their strength was too great. After all, they weren't heaven-defying existences like Kong Shinmu. They could only do it step by step. But now, as 4th-class disciples of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land, they immediately learned of the battle between Kong Shinmu and Zhao Qingtian. Therefore, they immediately rushed over. The 3 girls and Liang Xiao made up a total of 4 people, and they could be considered eye-catching in the crowd. After all, they were geniuses that had emerged from the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Lands this year. Especially Ran, who actually had a 72% compatibility with the Divine Dragon Blood Essence. Chapter 4969. The 72-point Divine Dragon Inheritance Blood Compatibility meant that Ran could easily advance all the way to the Supreme Divine Dragon level without encountering any bottlenecks during the process. This was the power of Ran's talent. Because of this, Ran had become the leader of the 4-member team, and Ran was the strongest among the 4 of them. Xiao Yuhua, Xiao Bai, and Liang Xiao usually called her Sister Ran. Of course, Ran didn't put on any airs and addressed them as sisters. Only when the battle was tense, Ran would erupt with her strongest combat power and courage to lead them to victory. Ran had saved the 3 of them many times during the previous exploration of the ruins, so they were grateful to Ran. When Kong Shinmu wasn't around, many things happened and changed a lot of things. However, there was one thing that didn't change. In the hearts of the 4 of them, no matter what, Jiang Shenwu would always be the strongest in the world. No matter who it was, no one could stop Jiang Shenwu's advancement. This included Zhao Qingtian, the legendary young Master Zhao, who was in the top 10 of the younger generation of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land. Zhao Qingtian was really strong. Speaking of which, Ran and the other 3 couldn't believe that Kong Shinmu could challenge Zhao Qingtian. However, since Kong Shinmu proposed the challenge, Kong Shinmu definitely had a certain degree of confidence. They had never seen Kong Shinmu lose in such a situation. Therefore, they were very confident in Kong Shinmu now. At the same time, they were extremely curious. They wanted to know what Kong Shinmu relied on to challenge Zhao Qingtian this time. Was it the legendary brand new Starry Sky inheritance that they had just obtained? What was the power of that inheritance? Now, many people in the surrounding crowd were guessing that Kong Shinmu must have dared to challenge Zhao Qingtian because of the brand new inheritance. And that brand new power of inheritance was about to appear in front of everyone. How could Zhao Qingtian not know this? However, he felt that even if it was a brand new legacy, it was impossible for Kong Shinmu to leap from the Dragon Emperor to the 3rd level of the Super Mystical Dragon, right? One had to know that in this period of time, he had crossed an entire realm, and there were still 5 small realms. This was simply a difference like that between heaven and earth. Of course, although Zhao Qingtian did not put Kong Shinmu in his eyes on the surface, he was actually quite cautious. At the very least, he felt that Kong Shinmu was not a retard. Since he dared to provoke him, he must have a certain level of strength. And he felt that Kong Shinmu must be relying on that brand new inherited power, something called the Starry Sky Power inheritance. Let me see, how powerful is this so-called double inheritance? Zhao Qingtian snorted coldly, and then he transformed into a dragon. His fire divine dragon body directly erupted with a roar of flames, sweeping towards the left and right of Kong Shinmu. Like 2 flame tornadoes, they brushed past Kong Shinmu. It's starting. Transform into a dragon. Zhao Qingtian sneered. No need. The corners of Kong Shinmu's mouth curled up slightly. In this battle, he really did not intend to use the ability of the Dragon God clan. After all, his current strength was only at the 7th level of the Emperor stage. As Zhao Qingtian said, the strength of the Dragon God clan at this level could not be Zhao Qingtian's opponent at all, so there was no need to use it at all. And this battle was the first battle of the inheritance of the Starry Sky power. He wanted to test the actual combat ability of the inheritance of the Starry Sky power. Void Star Wave. Kong Shinmu did not transform into a dragon. He just raised his hand, and a burst of Starry Sky power erupted from his hand. Waves of terrifying and amazing void ripples spread out to both sides. The two flame tornadoes that Zhao Qingtian casually spurted out were directly dispersed by Kong Shinmu's Void Star Wave. Star Rune, Star Explosion. Then, without any hesitation, Kong Shinmu directly condensed 2 golden star runes, 5 silver star runes, and 10 white star runes under the gaze of tens of thousands of people. Across the void, he directly released a burst of starry sky power at the place where Zhao Qingtian had transformed into the flaming divine dragon. Different combinations of star runes would produce different effects. They could be used to attack, defend, and even hide or move stealthily without any problems. Now, what Kong Shinmu used was an attack. Combination of star runes, Star Explosion. This star explosion was mainly composed of 2 golden star runes, so its combat power was not particularly strong. In the absence of the crystal runes, it was quite difficult to deal with a supreme god-level opponent. However, when Kong Shinmu released this move, it still shocked Zhao Qingtian. This was because the destructive power released by Kong Shinmu's star explosion surpassed that of an ordinary Peak Dragon Emperor powerhouse. If an ordinary Peak Dragon Emperor powerhouse faced Kong Shinmu's star explosion, he would definitely feel a lot of pressure. In fact, if Kong Shinmu used it continuously, even a Peak Dragon Emperor might not be able to withstand it. This was just a casual move that Kong Shinmu used, but isn't it too inexperienced to use this move to deal with me? Zhao Qingtian snorted coldly. Although this move was casually used by Kong Shinmu, he did not believe that Kong Shinmu had the ability to defeat him. This star explosion technique was far from being able to defeat him. With just a casual thought, a flame barrier enveloped his divine dragon body. The power of the star explosion could not destroy his flame defense barrier at all. Impact of ancient raging flames. Zhao Qingtian's flame talent power erupted, and his supreme god-level power was perfectly unleashed at this moment. The power in his body condensed into a pillar of fire that soared into the sky. It condensed from the ground and rushed toward Kong Shinmu, who was floating in the air. This was his strongest attack without using the dragon weapon. He did not use the dragon weapon because he was really afraid that he would kill Kong Shinmu directly. Now, his impact of ancient raging flames directly put Kong Shinmu in great danger. Everyone around felt the power of the impact of ancient raging flames and was shocked. Zhao Qingtian's power seemed to be stronger than the last time they saw him. Could Kong Shinmu really resist it? Seeing this scene, as Zhao Qingtian's attack swept over, Kong Shinmu raised his right hand. Star Rune, Impact of Star Waterfall. A total of 7 golden star runes formed a terrifying explosive power, condensing the power of the starry sky like a waterfall. It poured out from Kong Shinmu's right hand and directly enveloped Zhao Qingtian's impact of ancient raging flames. A starry blue impact of star waterfall directly collided with the impact of ancient raging flames and exploded in the air not far below Kong Shinmu. Starry blue and fiery red power ripples spread rapidly in all directions. Chapter 4970. Zhao Qingtian had never imagined that Kong Shinmu could be evenly matched with him. Although he had yet to use the super dragon weapon to activate his primordial raging flames, it was definitely not something an ordinary dragon emperor could withstand. Even an extraordinary dragon emperor would find it difficult to withstand it. One had to know that his primordial raging flames was an attack at the peak of the 2nd level of the super divine dragon. Even a peak dragon emperor like Gu Xinyue, who could fight against the first level of the super divine dragon, would not be able to withstand his primordial raging flames. Now, Kang Xinmu seemed to be able to withstand his primordial raging flames easily. This made Zhao Qingtian extremely shocked. To be honest, he had never seen a dragon emperor who could do this. He had never even thought that Kang Xinmu would cross a major realm and several minor realms to fight against him. The power of the transcendent stage was that after reaching the transcendent stage, their own energy would increase. When they used the dragon martial skill, their own power would become endless. This was somewhat similar to Kang Xinmu's devouring power, which was constantly devouring. In fact, after reaching the transcendent stage, the advantage of Kang Xinmu's devouring power had become smaller. After all, others would not be in a situation where they lacked energy. Situations where their energy was depleted were relatively rare. Unless it was a very intense and long battle, it was possible for their energy to be depleted. For Kang Xinmu, if he used the devouring power, he could also deplete his opponent's energy. However, in this battle, Kang Xinmu did not want to deplete his opponent's energy. As for Zhao Qingtian, Kang Xinmu could completely defeat him head-on. At this moment, Kang Xinmu and Zhao Qingtian were actually tied. Although Zhao Qingtian had yet to use his super divine dragon weapon, this was already enough to shock countless people around. They could not imagine what kind of power Kang Xinmu had obtained. What kind of power was the star waterfall impact just now? It looked like the power of the void of the spatial attribute, but it also had the color of the power of the stars. It looked incomparably mysterious and mystical. Every time Jiang Shenwu used a technique, there would be some mysterious patterns revolving around his body, which were the star runes. In the eyes of the surrounding people, it was incomparably mystical. The power of these mysterious patterns could actually allow Kang Xinmu, a 7th-level dragon emperor, to compete with Zhao Qingtian. Moreover, Jiang Shenwu had yet to transform into his divine dragon form. In other words, the rumored power that Jiang Shenwu had obtained could be fully unleashed without transforming into a dragon? In other words, the rumored power that Kang Xinmu had obtained could be fully exerted without transforming into a divine dragon? Unfortunately, Kang Xinmu had not used his full strength yet. The strength of a supreme god was indeed much stronger than that of a dragon emperor. Kang Xinmu pondered calmly. He roughly estimated the power of Zhao Qingtian's ancient raging flames just now. It was almost 5 times stronger than his full-strength level 9 extreme dragon blast. If he were in the form of a dragon warrior, he would basically not be able to resist such an impact. However, the inheritance of the power of the starry sky had created a miracle, allowing him to directly resist the power of such a move. Putting everything else aside, the lethality of the star rune, star waterfall impact was more than 5 times that of Kang Xinmu's full-strength level 9 extreme dragon blast. That was why he could offset Zhao Qingtian's ancient raging flames in midair. What kind of technique is this? Zhao Qingtian asked with a cold snort. He was also shocked by the scene in front of him, but he forced himself not to show it. Instead, he asked as if he didn't care at all. Starry Sky Inheritance. Kang Xinmu said straightforwardly. There was no need for him to hide the name of this inheritance. Anyway, no one else could obtain this inheritance. So what if they knew? Even if he knew, Kang Xinmu had hundreds of ways to deal with Zhao Qingtian. After all, he had learned so many star runes, crystal runes, and golden runes. There were hundreds of combinations of these too. Although there were not many effective and powerful combinations, each of them had their own special effects. They were completely competent for the battle between Kang Xinmu and Zhao Qingtian at this time. Starry Sky Inheritance? Zhao Qingtian narrowed his eyes and then snorted coldly, humph. Today, I'd like to see which is stronger, the inheritance of the power of the starry sky or the inheritance of the dragon god clan. His words were somewhat interesting. He easily put Kong Shinmu on the opposite side of all the spectators in the field. After all, what Kong Shinmu was using now was not the inheritance of the Dragon God clan, and all the spectators present were from the Dragon God clan. So when they heard Zhao Qingtian's words, they would naturally compare what they had learned with what Kong Shinmu was using now. In this way, it could make people have a hostile mentality towards Kong Shinmu. After all, those who were not of the same clan must have different intentions. Even if it was Kong Shinmu, it was the same. As long as he did not use the inheritance of the Dragon God clan, he would be envied and suppressed by others. Do you think you can beat me with words? Kong Shinmu didn't care about this and just said lightly. He didn't pay attention to the surrounding crowd at all. For him, these people didn't matter, but he couldn't ignore them. Otherwise, he knew very well how much trouble it would bring him if the rumor spread. But it didn't matter. Divine Dragon Body, come. So, Kong Shinmu directly transformed into the body of a black divine dragon and flew up from the field. The devouring power all over his body shrouded him. This was finally the inheritance of the Dragon God clan, right? Otherwise, others would think that Zhao Qingtian was fighting with someone from another clan. However, after transforming into a dragon, it didn't mean that Kong Shinmu couldn't use the power of the inheritance of the starry sky. Star Rune, Void Swiftness. The combination of star runes of void swiftness could make the power of the starry sky enhance one's speed and understanding of the power of space to a very high level. Now, although Kong Shinmu's cultivation of the Dragon God clan was only at the 7th level of the Dragon Emperor, he could use star runes to enhance himself. He had mastered many ways to enhance himself with star runes. In addition to this void swiftness, his whole body was covered with the power of the starry sky. Star Rune, Star Power Collapse. With the enhancement of Star Power Stampede, every time Kong Shinmu used a method, he could use the power of the starry sky to blast the space where his opponent was. This was a super powerful method.